Chapter 20. Qin Feng's guess was right. There was indeed another exit in this underground relic, and it was in the other direction of the swamp, in a narrow rift valley. Rumble. In the usually quiet rift valley, a stone wall suddenly shook and opened from the middle. It was a stone door that could be opened, and a figure rushed out like lightning. What was strange was that this figure was also carrying a bronze cauldron. The wind whistled as it tore through the air. The gigantic bronze cauldron gave people a feeling of extreme shock, but in the hands of this figure, it was incomparably light. He even made a gesture of throwing a stone. From the looks of it, the bronze cauldron was like a stone in his hands. Abnormal power. When Qin Feng came out, he saw an abandoned bronze cauldron at the exit. He felt that it could be used as a weapon, so he pulled it out. At this moment, there was a vigorous vitality awakening in his body, and his strength was increasing. He called this awakening power the strength of Black Tortoise. This bronze cauldron, which weighed almost 1,000 pounds, was nothing in his hands. At this moment, dusk was approaching. After leaving the Rift Valley, Qin Feng did not return to the Qiang Mountains. The small courtyard in the Qiang Mountains had been completely abandoned. Out of the Rift Valley, they were greeted by a verdant and lush forest. Towering mountains and lofty ridges stood tall and straight. The sun was setting in the west, and the dusk was like blood. The Rift Valley was about 40 to 50 miles away from Upper River Town. If there were no accidents, he should be able to go back the next day after a night's rest. Walking in the forest, Qin Feng's face was cold, and he was thinking about the future. The third heaven of martial arts already had the strength to protect himself. Coupled with the abnormal strength of Black Tortoise, his combat strength was far beyond the average fourth heaven of martial arts. However, the third heaven of martial arts was not so easy to achieve. If he wanted to break through the fourth heaven of martial arts in a short time, it would take a long time. But if there are elixirs, it will be different. I am proficient in the art of elixir formation. Maybe I can consider refining a furnace of bone-tempering elixirs or vitality-tempering elixirs. One bone-tempering elixir is equal to half a month's practice. If I have a few more bottles, I may be able to break through the fourth heaven of martial arts. A single bone-tempering pill was worth dozens of gold. In a large clan like the Qin clan, only the direct descendants could receive 2 bone-tempering pills per month. Its value was self-evident. It wasn't difficult to refine the bone-tempering pill. Its main ingredient was the bone marrow of an ominous beast. One only needed to kill an ominous beast, peel its skin, pull out its tendons, remove its flesh, and remove its bones. Then, one would be able to refine the pill. The only problem was the earth fire in the pill furnace. Just as Qin Feng was vexed over the matter of the pill furnace's earth fire, he suddenly heard someone shout from the forest, "Hey, there's movement here. Look over there. There are traces of movement on the branches. Quick, let's go take a look." Following this figure, Qin Feng heard rustling footsteps coming towards him from the forest. Qin Feng frowned. He carried the bronze cauldron and hid behind a big tree. He didn't panic, but he thought to himself, how did they get here so quickly? Since when did Old Sixth have such a powerful force? That's not right. Could it be that the Patriarch, Qin Qingshan, was alerted? He was startled, and his face became dignified. While he was thinking, 2 people walked out of the forest 100 steps away. These 2 people were dressed in martial attire. Both of them had the strength of the late stage of the first sky of the martial path. They exuded a murderous aura. Obviously, they were experienced killers. The 2 people glanced around with bright eyes. One of them said in a low voice, "Strange, there was movement here just now. Why didn't I see anything when I walked in?" The other voice said disapprovingly, "You're too careful. Maybe it's some wild beast. There are many wild beasts in the periphery of the barbaric mountains. It could also be a herb gatherer. It's not necessarily that person." The first voice said in a low voice, "This time, the young masters have given a strict order. No matter what it is, as long as it's active in this area, we have to catch it. We can't let it go. It's definitely not some wild beast. My family has been hunters in this forest for generations. How can we not tell the difference between wild beasts and wild beasts? Look at the traces of broken branches. Someone must be coming this way. He must be nearby. The first voice said decisively. Qin Feng hid behind a tree. Hearing the conversation between the two people, he looked at the big cauldron under his feet and couldn't help thinking. I didn't expect to be so unlucky. I just accidentally broke a few branches while carrying this thing. And these people found the clues. While he was thinking, the two of them followed the trail and were only 10 steps away from him. They slowly moved towards the big tree that Qin Feng was hiding behind. At this time, Qin Feng laughed, but his smile was a little cold behind the tree. One of his hands was already on one of the feet of the big cauldron. Since they had already discovered his tracks, they could only kill him to silence him. The distance between the two people was getting closer and closer. When they were only 7 or 8 steps away, he suddenly appeared with the bronze cauldron in his hand. Like a strong bear, he held the bronze cauldron upside down. His footsteps were like thunder. The huge bronze cauldron fiercely hammered down, wanting to smash the two people to death. Ever since he swallowed the black tortoise divine pill, his body had integrated with a trace of the black tortoise's power. His strength was constantly increasing. The exaggerated bronze cauldron in his hand was as light as a branch. The moment the cauldron was pulled up, it appeared above the two people in the next moment. The two of them were veterans of hundreds of battles. After searching for clues, the two of them were already secretly on guard. But they never thought that Qin Feng's speed would be so fast and his movements so fierce. In the blink of an eye, a terrifying bronze cauldron appeared in front of them. At a glance, they knew that the terrifying cauldron was at least 1,000 pounds. While they were scared out of their wits, the two people raised the long sabers in front of them, intending to block the huge cauldron. But this was a 1,000-pound bronze cauldron. In addition to Qin Feng's terrifying black tortoise's brute strength, the cauldron smashed down. The two martial artists in the late stage of the first sky of the martial path didn't even have time to scream. They could only be smashed into meat patties along with their sabers. The two martial artists in the late stage of the first sky of the martial path didn't even manage to block one move. They were smashed to death. The scene was miserable. Qin Feng waved the blood-stained bronze cauldron in his hand. This cauldron, matched with his brute strength, was unexpectedly useful. No matter what kind of saber technique or sword technique you use, once I smash down with the cauldron, you will all kneel down. Thinking in his heart, Qin Feng was about to leave. Suddenly, with his sharp eyes, he saw a yellowed piece of paper in a meat patty on the ground. Qin Feng took off the clothes and found a secret manual, as well as a few tales of silver. Middle-tier, human martial-level secret manual, long-wind saber technique. Qin Feng glanced at it and soon sighed in disappointment. This secret manual may be very precious to the martial artist who kept it, but it was worthless to him. Not to mention, he never liked saber techniques. But he didn't throw it away. It was still a middle-tier, human martial-level saber technique. If he bought it, he could exchange it for hundreds of taels of silver. If the little maid knew that he threw away hundreds of taels of silver, he didn't know how she would blame him. On the other person, he found a small porcelain bottle. But this small porcelain bottle had already been smashed by his cauldron. The only remaining light yellow pill had already cracked open. Picking up the pill, Qin Feng secretly scolded himself. Since ancient times, killing and robbing have always been the same. How could I forget this? These guys are all martial artists. They must have some good stuff on them. I should have been more gentle when I started. This low-grade bone-tempering pill has already been smashed. What a pity. Qin Feng almost forgot his old profession. Thinking of this, he once again searched the body of the meat pie a few more times. These two people were too seriously injured. Even their weapons were bent by him. There was nothing left for him to search. Qin Feng sighed. After dealing with the scene, he was a lot more careful. He carefully hurried on his way through the forest. However, to his surprise, in just a few miles, he encountered no less than 10 groups of people searching for him. These people were all dressed up, usually in groups of 3 to 5 people. Most of them were at the first or second heavenly layer of the martial path. There were even a few groups of martial artists at the third heavenly layer. Obviously, these people were in the same group as the people he had killed earlier. They were very vigilant and carefully searched the forest. Not a single drop of water leaked out. They were extremely experienced. These were the elite disciples of the Qin family. Even with Qin Feng's caution, he was almost found several times. I can't go on like this. This place has been set up into an inescapable net. These elite disciples are extremely experienced in searching. The gaps in their search are interconnected and coordinated with each other. The deeper I go, the higher the chances of being discovered. It seems like I have to kill them all. I can only kill my way out. Chapter 21. Die for me. Qin Feng roared, dragging the bronze cauldron as he rushed forward with an overlord's charge. The huge bronze cauldron was like a thunderbolt, its huge force heavily injuring a late-stage second firmament martial artist. Wiping the blood stains on his face, Qin Feng skillfully searched the body of the martial artist with broken bones. Near this martial artist, there were several other martial artists who were either seriously injured or unconscious. In order to break through, he had already encountered 4 or 5 search teams like this in just a short 2 to 4 hours. Most of them were led by late-stage second firmament martial artists, while the rest were accompanied by elites of the first firmament. There were also some guards who had not yet entered the door of martial arts. Each team had about 7 or 8 people. The more powerful ones had 10 people, while the less powerful ones had 5 or 6 people. In a short period of time, he had attacked 5 squads one after another. At least 10 warriors of the second celestial layer of the martial path had been injured by him, and he was unscathed. That's right, only injured but not dead. This was where Qin Feng was ruthless. Most of the martial artists who were hit by the bronze cauldron had their bones broken. Even if they survived, they would be crippled and lose the ability to fight back. If he killed them directly, it would definitely anger the rest of the Qin family, making them united against a common enemy. But if he only seriously injured them, it would make the Qin family fearful. After suffering such serious injuries, they naturally needed to heal and settle down. This was not a small burden for the Qin family. If he killed them directly, then the Qin family's burden would be much lighter. At most, they would just have to pay the settling down fee and be done with it. And it would also deter the martial artists who were chasing him. But after fighting for so long, although he was not injured, he could not help but feel a trace of fatigue. But looking at the harvest, Qin Feng could not help but reveal a trace of a smile. After a few attacks, the scattered silver he collected formed a big bag, and there were also a few yellow ingots of gold. In addition, there were a total of 2 secret manuals, one of which was a mid-stage human martial level saber technique, and one of which was a low-stage human martial level sword technique. He also found 2 bottles of pills, both of which were low-grade bone-tempering pills. Bone-tempering pills were divided into 3 grades. The higher the quality, the less impurities it contained. These 2 bottles of bone-tempering pills were low-grade bone-tempering pills. Such low-grade bone-tempering pills contained a lot of impurities. Most direct disciples disdained to consume them, because consuming low-grade bone-tempering pills would have a great impact on their future cultivation. It could even shackle their own potential. Only some martial artists who knew their potential was limited would give up on it and swallow this kind of pill in order to increase their cultivation as quickly as possible in exchange for glory and wealth. Although Qin Feng didn't like these 2 bottles, he didn't throw them away. Seeing that there was no profit to be gained, Qin Feng didn't care about the wailing of the few unlucky fellows on the ground. Without delay, he picked up the bundle, put the secret manuals and pills into his bosom, and disappeared with the bronze cauldron in his hand. He had already gotten used to killing people and robbing them. On top of a relatively high hill, there was a campsite that stretched for several hundred meters. Under the dusk, martial artists with profound auras walked in and out of the campsite. In the campsite, there was a warm fire. The bonfires were burning fiercely, and the fire illuminated the darkness. The martial artists looked sad and worried. In one of the most luxurious tents, the fire was bright, and the people in the tent looked gloomy. At this moment, a man in a tight suit was reporting in a low voice. Elders, young master. So far, there are nearly 10 missing search teams, including those who are seriously injured. On the main seat, Qin Feng's face was so gloomy that it was almost dripping water. For the first time, he felt a little headache. He had to admit that things were somewhat out of his control. First, his subordinate reported that Qin Feng's personal maid was missing, and then the search teams were in trouble. What hurt him the most was the loss of nearly 10 search teams. This was nearly 1/20th of the Qin family's strength. Even if they encountered fierce bandits who robbed the city, they didn't suffer a big loss. He rubbed his throbbing temples and asked faintly, "Do you have any clues about who did it?" The man in a tight suit hesitated for a moment and said, "That person didn't hide his identity. According to several seriously injured martial artists, that person seems to be the 9th young master." "What 9th young master? How could he injure so many people?" "Are you sure?" Qin Muhan, who was sitting at the bottom, stood up in surprise. The man with the black face wiped the sweat on his forehead and said, "It's absolutely true. Several martial artists at the late stage of the second sky of martial path are certain that the 9th young master did it. His weapon is a bronze cauldron that weighs more than 1,000 pounds. He smashed them into serious injuries as soon as he came, but he didn't kill them. He only robbed them. That's impossible. Using a cauldron that weighs more than 1,000 pounds as a weapon? Isn't this trash only at the first sky of martial path? How could he have such great strength?" Qin Mian cried out in surprise, his eyes full of disbelief. "This is indeed incredible. As everyone knows, he has been wandering in the first sky of martial path for nearly 10 years. It's not difficult to lift a cauldron that weighs more than 1,000 pounds. Some gifted martial artists at the late stage of the second sky of martial path can barely lift it. However, to be able to use such a cauldron as a weapon, I'm afraid that ordinary martial artists at the third sky of martial path can't do it." A gloomy voice analyzed. This person was wearing a tall hat and a gray feather coat. There was a trace of coldness on his face. He was Qin Muhan, who had always looked down on Qin Feng. The two of them could be said to have a great hatred of life and death. Qin Feng was beaten up by him and his men. That was why he died and allowed old Demon Qin to take over his body. The person who was most annoyed and infuriated was none other than Qin Muhan. That is to say, this kid has reached the third sky of martial path in just one night. Qin Shu, who was sitting on the left, sighed thoughtfully as his eyes flashed. "Damn it, this guy really doesn't care about the interests of the family and embezzles the treasures." With a bang, Qin Muyun slammed the table in front of him into pieces. His eyes were red with jealousy, and his face was a little distorted. Most of the young masters present were unable to calm down. They were unwilling, resentful, jealous, and murderous. But most of them were greedy and fiery. Now, in their eyes, Qin Feng was simply a fat sheep. Although Qin Feng showed that his cultivation was at the third sky of martial path, in their eyes, it just proved that he must have obtained a great opportunity. If they could seize this opportunity, wouldn't their cultivation be improved by leaps and bounds? Wouldn't they be able to suppress all the competitors present? Cough, cough. Behind Qin Feng, a hunchbacked old man coughed dryly and walked out. He was hunchbacked and dressed in black. Under the candlelight, he looked extremely inconspicuous. However, as soon as he appeared, many young masters couldn't help but change their expressions. They forcibly restrained the greed and fiery passion in their eyes. This hunchbacked old man was called Qin Zhong. He was the personal old servant of the current head of the family, Qin Qingshan. Although he was hunchbacked, his cultivation was unfathomable. In the past, he and Qin Qingshan went through wind and rain. Qin Qingshan was able to reach this step today and become the head of the Qin family because of his contribution. These years of self-cultivation, he followed behind Qin Feng. No one knew how strong he was. Although he was only a housekeeper, no matter which young master of the Qin family saw him, they had to respectfully call him Grandpa. "Young masters, I have something to say. I wonder if you would like to hear it." "Grandpa Zhong, please speak." Qin Shu quickly stood up and said with a respectful face. He was the eldest among all the brothers. Although everyone knew that he was not the next popular successor of the family head, he was still the eldest brother of all the young masters present in name. The hunchbacked old man nodded. Under the light of the fire, his walnut-like old face had a gentle expression. He said faintly, "The ninth young master is extremely selfish. He did not care about the interests of the family. It is certain that he has embezzled the family's treasures to fill his own pockets. Moreover, he is vicious and merciless. He has injured the family's elites and is lawless. This man is so cruel and ruthless. It is a disaster for the Qin family. More importantly, he is carrying the treasures of the Qin family. It is urgent to get the treasures back. I hope that all the young masters will put the interests of the family first and work together to capture this unfilial son of the family. If any of the young masters can capture this unfilial son, I will definitely report to the head of the family and help him." The people below were immediately tempted. Qin Shu had the most stable temperament. He pondered for a moment and asked, "But Qin Feng is now a lone wolf. Now that his cultivation has improved greatly, he is vicious and merciless, and he is extremely cunning. I am afraid that it will be difficult for anyone to catch him in the forest." The hunchbacked old man raised his head and looked at Qin Shu strangely. With just a glance, Qin Shu suddenly felt his muscles stiffen. A sense of terror rose from his heart. What a terrifying gaze. Qin Shu's back was covered with a layer of white sweat. His cultivation was at the middle stage of the third heaven of martial arts. He could not even bear a glance from the hunchbacked old man. The hunchbacked old man's eyes were cold. He would only show a kind expression when he was facing Qin Feng. "Young master, you don't have to worry about this. I have brought a team of elites from the law enforcement hall. Each of them has a cultivation above the fourth heaven of martial arts. It is more than enough to capture a little guy at the third heaven of martial arts." After finishing his words, he clapped his hands. A team of warriors with profound aura walked in from outside the tent. Each of them was above 30 years old. They were dressed in tight clothes and looked indifferent. Their bodies exuded a palpitating sense of oppression. Each of them had a cultivation above the fourth heaven of martial arts. The two men in green who were leading the team even had a cultivation of the fifth heaven of martial arts. Chapter 22. Qin Feng growled. The huge bronze cauldron tore through the air and knocked out a warrior at the late stage of the second sky of martial arts. Qin Feng waved his arm and sighed slightly. This was the 15th team he had encountered tonight. The closer he got to Upper River Town, the more intensive the search teams were. So far tonight, he had already injured nearly 30 warriors at the second sky of martial arts. In a short period of time, he had consecutively injured so many martial artists. Even with Qin Feng's strength, it was inevitable that he would suffer some injuries. His arm had been slashed by a saber, and his waist had also been slashed by a weapon. He grabbed a warrior on the ground who had not fainted yet. Grabbing his arm, he instinctively operated the extracting marrow and returning to Yuan technique. A steady stream of profound qi poured into his body like a dam that had been opened. While his opponent was terrified, he quietly absorbed all the profound qi of this warrior, who was at the late stage of the second sky of martial arts. When the pure, profound qi entered his body, it was as if he was soaking in a hot spring. The cut on his back healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The profound qi of a warrior at the late stage of the second sky of martial arts was far from what an ordinary person could compare with. After absorbing all the profound qi, Qin Feng's minor injuries were instantly healed. The extra profound qi merged into his body and was refined by his qi and blood, making his profound qi even more majestic. There were signs of him breaking through to the middle stage of the third sky of martial arts. Glancing at the search team lying on the ground in disorder, Qin Feng skillfully plundered all of these people. A lot of things were placed in front of him. Qin Feng didn't care about some silver and gold. He had plundered too much in one night, and it had become a burden. Except for the banknotes, which were convenient to carry, he gave up everything else. The rest were a bottle of elixirs and a secret book. These were found on the body of the leader of this team, a warrior at the peak of the second sky of martial arts. The elixir was the quenching essence pill. The bone-tempering pill was the most commonly used elixir in the early stage of the third sky of martial arts. At the fourth heavenly layer of the martial path, the effect of this kind of pill would be greatly reduced, and its effect would be limited. However, there was a kind of medicinal pill that could replace the bone-tempering pill, and that was the quenching pill. The quenching pill could be said to be an improved version of the bone-tempering pill's formula. It was specially used for martial artists above the fourth firmament. To Qin Feng's delight, it was a bottle of middle-grade quenching essence pills. The middle-grade quenching essence pills contained very few impurities, so it could be consumed after a little refinement. A quenching essence pill could save him half a month of cultivation. The price of a quenching essence pill was 4 to 5 times more expensive than a bone-tempering pill. A quenching essence pill was worth 4 to 500 taels of gold. In the Qin clan, only elders and deacons had the right to receive it. Every month, they could only receive 2 pills, which were extremely precious. This warrior at the late stage of the second sky of the martial path might be a descendant of an elder or a deacon. He took a quick glance at the secret manual. It was an advanced human martial arts level sword art, worth several hundred taels of gold. However, he had a lot of things to do, so he didn't really care about it. Seeing that he didn't overlook anything, Qin Feng quickly put the banknotes, secret manual, and pills into his arms. He glanced at the surrounding forest and prepared to retreat. This time, he only walked 100 steps before stopping, because in front of him, a small team of 5 or 6 people just happened to walk out from the bushes. They just happened to bump into him. This small team only had 6 people, but each of them had a strong aura that was different from the other small teams. Qin Feng took a look, and his heart sank. Every one of them was at least at the second sky of the martial path. The leader of the team was a middle-aged man in green clothes with a square face. His aura was even stronger than Qin Feng's. The third sky of the martial path. Seeing Qin Feng suddenly appear, the middle-aged man with a square face was obviously stunned. Then he saw the small team lying in disorder behind Qin Feng, and a trace of killing intent appeared in his eyes. He stared at Qin Feng and slowly said, "Ninth young master, you have already committed a heinous crime. You have no way out. Come back with us to receive your punishment. Maybe the Patriarch will spare your life for Qin Zhan's sake." Patriarch? Who does that old man think he is? The world is big, and I am the biggest. What ability does that old thing have to convict me? You want to catch me? You all have to die today. Qin Feng laughed, and a trace of coldness appeared in the corner of his eyes. When enemies meet on a narrow path, the brave wins. The one who strikes first gains the advantage, and the one who strikes later suffers. After he finished speaking, his figure was like a cheetah carrying the bronze cauldron. Using the bronze cauldron as a hammer, he smashed down. A huge force tore through the air and instantly arrived above the heads of the 5 people. Pick the soft persimmon first. His power was focused on the weakest black-clothed man. This black-clothed man carried a sword on his back and was at the early stage of the second sky of the martial path. He didn't expect Qin Feng to suddenly attack him. Although he was on guard from the beginning, at this moment he couldn't dodge. In a hurry, he could only use his arms to block in front of his body to save his life. The bronze cauldron weighed more than 1,000 jin, and Qin Feng's ocean-suppressing black tortoise strength was not something his body could block. Only a few crisp cracking sounds could be heard. Qin Feng's bronze cauldron smashed over and directly sent him flying several feet away. Who knew how many bones in his body were broken? He fell to the ground and soon lost his breath. A martial artist at the second sky of the martial path, in front of 5 people, was killed in 1 round. "Little bastard, you dare to do this?" The eyes of the square-faced, middle-aged man in the lead were about to split open. Seeing that Qin Feng actually dared to kill one of his subordinates in front of him, he roared furiously and led the remaining 4 subordinates to pounce forward. The moment they rushed forward, the 5 of them drew their weapons at the same time. Their weapons were all swords. The backs of the swords were thick, and the blades were sharp. It was a killing weapon. Qin Feng's mouth hung a trace of a sneer. He dodged and retreated, not facing the five of them head-on. He had rich combat experience and knew that he couldn't fight recklessly at this time. This was only one group of people, and there were more search teams behind. He had to save his strength as much as possible, avoiding the strong and attacking the weak. He flashed and appeared behind the scar-faced man, who was at the early stage of the second sky of the martial path. He was like a ghost. The bronze cauldron swung down. The scar-faced man didn't expect that Qin Feng would choose him as the target, so he chose to retreat in fear. Although the bronze cauldron was heavy, Qin Feng was as fast as lightning. In an instant, it hit the scar-faced man who couldn't dodge in time. Puff! The scar-faced man's body was thrown high. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground with a loud bang. He stopped moving immediately. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. Suddenly, there were only 4 of the 6 people left. "Little bastard, you're too bold." The square-faced, middle-aged man's face was extremely gloomy. He was so murderous that only his eyes could be seen. With a roar, the remaining 4 people waved their long sabers and chopped toward Qin Feng's back. At this moment, Qin Feng had no time to dodge. In a hurry, he could only carry the bronze cauldron on his back to protect his back. Clang! There were several continuous sounds of metal clashing. Several strong forces pressed down on his back at the same time. Qin Feng's back sank. He exhaled and spread his feet. The breeze spirit-refining pillar naturally stepped out. His lower body seemed to be integrated with the earth and steadily carried the bronze cauldron on his back. The joint attack of 3 warriors at the late stage of the second sky of the martial path and 1 warrior at the middle stage of the third sky of the martial path was unexpectedly blocked by him. The breeze spirit-refining pillar was as steady as Mount Tai. A young man in tight clothes stared at Qin Feng's lower body, raised his head, and said slowly, "You've practiced the breeze spirit-refining pillar to the Deshang realm. Unmoving like a mountain, moving like a breeze." The breeze spirit-refining pillar was the most basic pillar technique of the Qin family. It was recorded in the basic martial arts of the Qin family, and any disciple could practice it. He had also practiced it before. However, when Qin Feng performed this simple pillar technique, it was as majestic as a breeze blocking the river. No matter how much power the 4 of them exerted, they could not move him at all. This made the 4 of them extremely shocked. However, after the shock, he smiled coldly. "Although you've practiced the breeze spirit-refining pillar to the Deshang realm that we can't reach, the breeze spirit-refining pillar is only a basic technique. Even if you've practiced it to an indescribable realm, its power is limited and cannot be compared with the martial arts techniques of the spiritual martial realm. Let's see how you're going to block our killing moves." The 4 of them looked at each other with murderous intent in their eyes. They pulled out their sabers and performed the only spiritual martial realm saber technique of the Qin family, the wild wind saber technique. The long saber flashed and disappeared in a flash. In the dim forest, the saber light could not be seen with the naked eye. His intuition told him that an unusually sharp cold light was like a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves, sweeping towards all the vital parts of his body. Qin Feng had goosebumps all over his body. A great sense of threat made his muscles tighten. The wild saber chi made numerous small bumps appear on his skin. Seeing these people display the hurricane blade art, he was not surprised but happy. He simply threw away the bronze cauldron in his hand. With a loud bang, the cauldron shook the ground. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He rushed up with his bare hands, and a set of fist arts in his hands blasted towards the 4 people. A gust of wild wind rushed out from his body. The terrifying aura expanded in the eyes of the 4 like a tornado. While the 4 of them were shocked, they only heard a cold laugh in the wild wind. A bunch of frogs at the bottom of the well. Do you think the martial arts techniques of the spiritual martial realm are so great? You should know that the strength of the martial arts technique does not depend on the level of the technique, but on the warrior who uses the technique. Now, I've already practiced the breeze spirit-refining pillar and the wild wind bone-forging fist of the Qin family to the Deshang realm. I've comprehended a little bit of the essence of wind. If you guys could comprehend the wild wind saber technique to the Dashang realm, I might give you some leeway. But now, you've only learned a little bit and you dare to boast here. You don't know how to write the word death. Chapter 23. Qin Feng's fist was like a meteor. His body was like a gust of wind as he threw away the 1,000-pound bronze cauldron. His strength was beyond imagination. His fist was like a gust of wind and thunder that swept across the sky. The fist technique was profound, and the wild power blew the four people to the verge of collapse. A perfect set of blade techniques was no more. Qin Feng was not boasting. He had already comprehended the Dashang level of the breeze mind, refining pillar, and the wild wind bone-forging fist. He had taken the opportunity to comprehend the concept of wind. A simple set of wild wind bone-forging fist seemed to come alive in his hands. He had practiced it to the point that it turned into a wild wind in the world. He was the god of the wind. He could control thousands of wild winds and walk in the wild wind like a ghost. It was as if his body had turned into the wind of the fist. How could the middle stage, human martial force, wild wind, bone-forging fist have such terrifying power? How could it be even more terrifying than the low-stage, wild wind blade technique? The square-faced, middle-aged man roared in a low voice. In such a terrifying fist technique, his middle-stage third sky of the martial path did not give him any sense of security. Instead, the more he fought, the more frightened he became. The four people's wild wind blade technique were all suppressed and could not be used. Instead, they were led by the nose by the opponent's wild wind bone-forging fist. The wild wind blade technique became full of flaws, and the opponent's seemingly simple wild wind bone-forging fist became unfathomable even though it was full of flaws. A few angry roars were heard again and again, but they were unable to do anything to Qin Feng's violent wind bone-forging fist. For a moment, they flew into a rage. A group of fools. The higher the level of the technique, the stronger the power. But you must know that it is the martial artist himself who controls the moves. No matter how high level the technique is, if you cannot fully comprehend it and completely control it, then it is only a flower in the water, the moon in the mirror. It will be broken in one hit. The essence of the technique is the concept. Only by mastering the concept can you be considered to have truly mastered the technique. Qin Feng suddenly appeared behind a dark-faced big man in the late-stage second sky of the martial path. Once he finished speaking, he sent a tornado breaker spell at the man's back. In his hands, the Gale bone-forging fist seemed to have the power to turn something rotten into something magical. It had already reached the level of perfection. Even the Gale blade technique of the spirit martial realm could not stop it. Bang! The dark-faced man was scared out of his wits. He quickly used the back of his saber to protect his vitals. However, he had underestimated Qin Feng's strength. Qin Feng didn't know how strong the strength of the black tortoise was, but he knew that it was 2 to 3 times stronger than an ordinary third heavenly layer martial artist. The black-faced man let out a muffled groan as he was sent flying several feet away. He spat out a mouthful of blood in midair and fell to the ground. It seemed that he wouldn't be able to survive. As a result, only 3 people were left. The 3 of them were like birds startled by the twang of a bow. 6 people had besieged him, but Qin Feng had killed 3 of them by himself. Little bastard, I'll take you down with me. Seeing that another brother had died an unnatural death, the eyes of the square-faced, middle-aged man turned crimson red. With a loud roar, he charged towards Qin Feng without any regard for his life. The Gale blade technique was displayed to the extreme. The saber light was faint, as if it was so fast that there was no trace. Like a crazy demon, he completely disregarded his own safety and wanted to take Qin Feng down with him. Looking at the saber light all over the sky, Qin Feng's face changed slightly. After all, this was a warrior at the middle stage of the third heavenly layer. If he fought with his life on the line, even Qin Feng had to be cautious. Qin Feng dodged the warrior at the middle stage of the third heavenly layer and appeared in front of the remaining two warriors at the late stage of the second heavenly layer. When the two saw Qin Feng suddenly appear, they panicked and their eyes flashed with deep bitterness. It turned out that the three of them had already discussed in secret. The three of them knew that they could not defeat Qin Feng, so they decided to let the square-faced, middle-aged man stall Qin Feng. The two of them escaped separately and went to report for help. Unexpectedly, Qin Feng saw through their premeditated plan. Run separately. The two of them looked at each other and ran. The trees here were sparse. One of them ran to the east and the other to the west, rushing into the dense forest. As long as they escaped into the dense forest, Qin Feng wouldn't be able to do anything to them. Where do you think you're going? Qin Feng instantly understood the intention of the two men. When he was about to block them, suddenly a figure rushed over, and a terrible cold light swept over his head. You go and report. I'll stall him. You go and come back quickly. A voice roared. His footwork was extremely fast. It seemed to be some kind of lightness skill. Caught off guard, Qin Feng was temporarily stalled by the square-faced, middle-aged man's suicidal attack. The two of them were overjoyed. Taking advantage of this opportunity, they hurriedly ran forward. No, I can't let these two escape. If they run out, my whereabouts will be exposed. Won't I be in danger? A trace of cold light flashed in Qin Feng's eyes. He stared at the square-faced, middle-aged man like a tiger staring at its prey. His body was like a tiger coming down the mountain. This time, he used all of his strength. As soon as he moved, there was a huge force. It was as if a beast was roaring in the fist technique. It was as if the mountains were collapsing, the earth was cracking, and the sea was shaking. The black tortoise fist technique of the intermediate spiritual martial realm. Black tortoise suppressing the sea. The square-faced, middle-aged man secretly complained. He clearly felt a huge force that was different from the past. However, he could not escape. He could only clench his teeth and block Qin Feng's way, hoping that the two men could call for help in time. With a roar, he raised his broadsword and slashed at Qin Feng. The faint light of the broadsword was almost inaudible in the dimming forest. At the critical moment of life and death, his broadsword technique had improved again. However, Qin Feng did not want to continue to be entangled. The longer he was entangled here, the more danger he would be in. Therefore, he would rather get injured and finish off this warrior in the middle stage of the third heaven of martial arts. Under the horrified gaze of the square-faced, middle-aged man, Qin Feng directly faced the broadsword with his body. At the cost of a cut in his abdomen, he directly clamped the long broadsword with his fine muscles. A fist that contained the power of the black tortoise was like lightning. It blasted into the middle-aged man's abdomen while he was still in shock. The huge force penetrated his abdomen. The middle-aged man raised his head with difficulty and looked at the indifferent and fierce young man in front of him. He opened his mouth. "You are so ruthless." After saying this, his head tilted and his eyes widened. He breathed his last breath. Witnessing the death of the square-faced, middle-aged man, the other two people were horrified. In fear, they hurriedly used all their strength to speed up towards the dense forest. As long as they rushed into the dense forest, they would be completely safe. Qin Feng took a deep breath and endured the severe pain of his wound. He aimed at the short, middle-aged man who was running east. His body was like a cheetah as he chased after him. In a few breaths, he had caught up. His arm thrusted out like lightning and chopped at the man's neck like a python that wanted to choose a person to swallow. Spirit Snake Demon Fist Technique. Spirit Snake takes soul. The short, middle-aged man did not expect that Qin Feng would take so long to catch up with him. His scalp was numb and his heart was frightened. He wanted to bend down and dodge. However, he had underestimated the dexterity of the Spirit Snake Demon Fist Technique. The Spirit Snake Demon Fist Technique had a great requirement for the warrior's body flexibility. Qin Feng had cultivated this fist technique, so his bones had been forged like a python. Once he set his eyes on his prey, no matter which angle he ran from, there was no way to dodge. His arm was like a snake's tail and instantly hooked the neck of the warrior in the late second sky of the martial path. With a crack, the sound of bones breaking was heard. The warrior in the late second sky of the martial path was immediately killed. Casually throwing away the corpse, Qin Feng rushed towards the last man without stopping. The man was extremely fast. In a few breaths, he had escaped to the vicinity of the dense forest. It seemed that he was only 100 steps away from entering the dense forest. Qin Feng rushed out. His fist was like a tortoise's shell. A huge force penetrated through the air. It was as if the surrounding was an ocean and he had incarnated into a divine tortoise, suppressing the ocean with a horrifying force. That person held his breath for a moment, and a trace of horror flashed in his eyes. That fierce pressure was pressing down on him, and his scalp was about to explode. That aura was like a tide, expanding and expanding, and in an instant, it enveloped him. While he was still in fear, a fist landed on his shoulder. The terrifying shockwave sent his body flying high into the air, crashing into an ancient tree. Amidst the intense pain, he felt as if all the bones in his body had been shattered. He raised his head with difficulty and unwillingly looked at the approaching figure. He trembled and asked, "What is this fist technique?" "Middle spiritual martial realm fist technique. Black tortoise sea suppressing fist." Qin Feng shrugged his shoulders and grabbed the man. Under the horrifying gaze of the 40-years-old middle-aged man, he began to operate the essence-refining technique. A steady stream of profound qi was absorbed from the man's body. A warm feeling flowed into the man's body. The several inches long scar on the man's abdomen began to form a scar. In a flash, the scar fell off, revealing the crystal-clear, tender flesh. The injury was completely healed. Qin Feng casually threw away the dried corpse in his hand. He glanced around and saw that there was no fish that had escaped the net. Suddenly, he let out a sigh of relief. At this point, an elite team, led by a warrior in the middle stage of the third sky of the martial path and 5 warriors in the second sky of the martial path, had been completely wiped out. After cleaning the scene again, Qin Feng was pleasantly surprised that the harvest was unexpectedly large. In addition to finding a large banknote worth nearly 1,000 years of gold on the body of the middle-aged man in the middle of the third heaven of martial path, he also found a bottle of rare upper-grade bone-tempering pills. There were still 3 pills left in the bottle. If he could swallow all of them, it would be equivalent to a month and a half of cultivation. Qin Feng swallowed one on the spot. A warm medicinal effect spread out and poured into his qi and blood. He actually broke through the middle stage of the third sky of the martial path. Suppressing the faint joy in his heart, he glanced around. Seeing that there was no overlook, he immediately rushed in a direction. Only after walking for half a mile, Qin Feng's footsteps stopped again. It was because a middle-aged man with a profound temperament walked out of the dense forest in front of him. His eyes fell on Qin Feng's body with a faint smile. Qin Feng's face became gloomy. This middle-aged man was dressed in green. He had a white face and no beard. There was a gorgeous sword that looked like an ornament on his waist. It seemed harmless, but Qin Feng gave birth to an incomparably dangerous feeling. With just a glance, Qin Feng knew that this was a warrior in the fourth sky of the martial path. Chapter 24. Quick Sword Feng Tong, Mr. Feng. Qin Feng's eyes darkened. He knew this expert of the fourth heaven of the martial path who was blocking his way. He was a famous swordsman who was good at using quick swords. Hence, he was given the nickname Quick Sword. Later, he was won over by the Qin clan and taught martial arts to the Qin clan disciples. Over the years, he gradually got closer to the third branch. Who would have known that he was now a member of the third branch? He had been by Qin Muyun's side for the past 2 years, helping Qin Muyun cultivate his power. He could be said to be the left and right hand of Qin Muyun, the 6th young master. Without him, Qin Muyun would not have his current position as the 6th young master. Unexpectedly, he appeared here at this time. Qin Feng felt a chill in his heart. The pressure this person gave him was no small matter. 9th young master, come with me. Feng Tong raised his head and looked at Qin Feng indifferently. His eyes were like water, and there was a gentle smile on his white, beardless face. It was as if he was looking at a naughty child. Come back with me and hand over all your opportunities and fortunes. Kneel down and kowtow to admit your mistakes. You are a smart person. You only did such a rebellious thing because you went astray. As long as you sincerely repent, you may have a chance to be accepted by the Qin clan again. Fong Tong's gaze was gentle as he looked at Qin Feng. It was as if he was a child who had made a mistake and was advising him. Qin Feng was slightly startled, and then he laughed strangely. Mr. Fong, have you lost your mind? Fong Tong was not angry, and his gaze did not change. He seemed to regard Qin Feng as a naughty child who did not follow his teachings. This gaze made Qin Feng feel very disgusted. Fong Tong shook his head and said, Qin Feng, I know that your mind has been muddled by the sudden increase in power, and you've fallen into a demonic state. That's why you're so stubborn and have done such an unfilial thing. I won't blame you. When you come back with me, you will come to your senses and repent. Qin Feng shook his head. Fong Tong, you're too confident. There are 9 layers of martial arts, and each layer is a layer of heaven. You're a martial artist at the 4th layer of the martial arts path. You think you can beat me, so you're talking nonsense. Every word you say is self-righteous, and you want to teach me a lesson. But in my opinion, you're nothing more than a clown full of righteousness and morality. Fong Tong was startled, clearly not expecting Qin Feng to evaluate him like this. His brow gradually furrowed, and after a while, he relaxed and said, Fine, it seems like you've lost yourself in the growth of your strength and walked on the wrong path. After I capture you, I'll have a way to teach you how to mend your ways. Fong Tong, you've already lost yourself in the consciousness of being a dog, and you keep saying that I've gone astray. This is the funniest thing in the world. Qin Feng couldn't help but laugh, but he didn't dare to underestimate Fong Tong in the slightest. The 9 heavens of the martial path, each layer was a layer of heaven. The difference between the 3rd layer of heaven and the 4th layer of heaven was huge. Although he said so, it didn't mean that Qin Feng was afraid. Although he was only at the middle stage of the 3rd layer of the martial arts path, it didn't only mean that he only had the battle strength of the same level. Eat my fist first. Black Turtle suppresses the sea. The one who makes the first move has the advantage. Qin Feng's body was like a cannonball as he punched down in the air. The impressive fist wind rubbed against the air, and a special wave seemed to even suppress the air. What kind of fist skill is this? What a wonderful fist strength. It should be a fist skill of the spiritual martial realm. You can actually perform a fist skill of the spiritual martial realm. No wonder you're so confident. Fong Tong's shoulders moved like a slippery loach. His eyes were full of surprise, and then with a touch of confidence. However, this is nothing. The power of the 4th layer of the martial arts path is far from being equalized by a set of fist skills. His 5 fingers turned into a palm, and the palm stretched out like lightning, directly blasting towards Qin Feng. High human martial realm palm skill, cold ice soft palm. When Qin Wentian's palm blasted out, an extremely sinister and cold energy gushed over. The palm shadows formed a myriad of palm shadows, sealing Qin Feng's entire body, causing Qin Feng to feel a terrifying chill. Inner strength. Qin Feng knew that this was a wonderful power that could only be comprehended after reaching the 4th layer of the martial arts path. This power could directly blast into the body, destroying the internal organs of the human body from the inside out. Don't touch. Crackle. The bones in Qin Feng's body crackled. His body contorted in a strange manner, resembling a spirit serpent as he narrowly dodged that palm strike. That terrifying tenacity made Fong Tong's eyes shine with a strange light, and surprise flashed through his eyes. The Spirit Snake Demon Fist was not only a set of fist skills, but also a set of body movements and footwork. It was extremely flexible and tricky. Fong Tong's eyes were very sharp. At a glance, he could see that this set of fist skills was very brilliant. It was at least a mid-level spirit martial realm fist skill. Although he was surprised when Qin Feng mastered such a brilliant fist skill, he was not worried. He did not think that Qin Feng could escape from his palm. A faint smile appeared on his face. One must know that his strongest point was not the palm skill, but the long sword at his waist. 13 Thunder Prison Swords. With this set of low-level spirit martial realm sword skill, no less than 10 strong warriors of the same level had died in his hands. He had even defeated warriors at the late stage of the 4th layer of the martial arts path. With this set of sword skills, he had defeated countless strong enemies. Therefore, he was able to enter the Qin family and become the Qin family's guest. And today, Qin Feng was no exception. He would fall under his sword. He put one hand on the long sword at his waist. With a clang, a round of bright sword light came out of the scabbard. A touch of silver light flashed under the moonlight. The sword was 3 feet long, with a narrow body and a slightly thin spine. The hilt was wrapped with silver threads and had an apricot yellow tassel. The head of the hilt was a monster called Xieji. The mouth of the beast contained jade. At a glance, one could tell that it was a carefully crafted sword. The sword was a good sword, but the most outstanding thing was the person who used it. That snow-white sword light was like a curved sword wheel that cut through the darkness. Under the moonlight, it was like a blooming waterfall, shining in all directions and capturing people's souls. The heart-moving sword light was like jumping thunder and lightning, blooming. The light was pregnant with a gloomy aura of death. In the darkness, Feng Tong's pupils reflected a faint light, a trace of cold, killing intent. At this moment, he finally tore apart the mask of gentleness and kindness that he had been pretending to be and revealed his true face. The greed in his eyes burned fiercely. His cold voice was like a gust of cold wind that blew into Qin Feng's heart. Qin Feng, a person's biggest mistake is greed. A person must know their own limits. You are only a trash disciple. You should obediently hand over the treasures you obtained. This is your duty. You have to know that with your talent, you don't have the qualifications to digest this kind of fortune. The treasures in your hands are a disaster. Feng Tong was originally thinking for your own good. Seeing that you are young, I saved your life. Now it seems that your selfish desires overflow the heavens. Your sin is unforgivable. Death is not to be regretted. Qin Feng's breathing paused for a moment. Under the cover of the cold sword light, all the hairs on his body stood on end. An unprecedented sense of danger appeared in his heart. This was not that Qin Feng was afraid, but the body's most instinctive reaction when encountering danger. At this critical moment, he did not panic. His eyes were dazzling like the sun. There seemed to be thunder and lightning brewing in his eyes. Rumble, the blood in his body, seemed to flow like a great river. Hearing this, he began to laugh. Old fart Feng, are you done with your lecture? You sound so righteous. Seeing that you look kind and amiable, others might think that you're a benevolent and righteous gentleman. However, they don't know that you're a beast with a human face. Inside, you're nothing more than a robber. If you want to take my treasures, just say it. Why do you have to put on an act and put on such a disgusting appearance? Huh! With a wild laugh, Feng Tong's face turned ashen. A figure tore through the air, leaping up to kill. With a punch, a brilliant and unstoppable force erupted. The terrifying force of the punch was like a dam bursting, a flash flood erupting. It met the long sword head-on. As he punched out, his arm vibrated intensely, as if it was rippling with a layer of green light. It was as pure as glass dragon scales and as shiny as diamond. That intense chi force rubbed against the air, as if some terrifying strange beast was roaring, bringing with it an intimidating primordial power. The surrounding air seemed to have solidified, suppressed by the terrifying concept. This was a trace of the power of the black tortoise. Clang! The fist landed on the sword. A tremendous force that Feng Tong could not imagine was transmitted to his palm. The web between his thumb and forefinger was faintly numb and painful. The long sword almost slipped out of his hand. Feng Tong's face was gloomy. A trace of panic flashed through his eyes. Shock. His heart trembled. What kind of power is this? No, this is impossible. He is just a lucky little bastard who got lucky by chance. How can he have such great power? However, without waiting for him to react, Qin Feng had already rushed up. Then, he threw a punch at Fong Tong, and the tremendous force caused a series of crackling noises in the air. The green, metal-like dragon scales on Fong Tong's arm rubbed against the air and exploded into lightning bolts, as if they were going to pierce through his stomach. Fong Tong's face turned pale with fright. Chapter 25. Fong Tong only felt the aura of death coming towards him. His eyes widened and a rare trace of fear involuntarily appeared on his face. He forcefully suppressed the shock in his heart and raised the long sword in his hand, thrusting it towards Qin Feng's abdomen like lightning. Mutual destruction. This was Fong Tong's most powerful aspect. He knew that he could not block the terrifying power in Qin Feng's fist, so he planned to attack Wei to rescue Zhao. If Qin Feng insisted on killing him, he would also be heavily injured and might even be killed by the power in his longsword. He was very confident that no one was unafraid of death. Qin Feng was no exception. Therefore, he predicted that Qin Feng would dodge and use this opportunity to pull away. Once he pulled away, it would be extremely difficult for Qin Feng to kill him again. Moreover, Fong Tong knew that this forest was densely packed with the Qin family's search teams. The commotion here would sooner or later attract the attention of the search team. As long as he delayed Qin Feng would undoubtedly die. These thoughts flashed through Fong Tong's mind in an instant. The corners of his mouth already revealed a confident smile. Clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing rang out. In the blink of an eye, his long sword had pierced Qin Feng. However, the situation that Fong Tong had imagined was different. Qin Feng's body seemed to be covered with a layer of terrifying scales. When the long sword pierced his shoulder, it actually set off layers upon layers of sparks. It was as if the long sword had pierced through a slippery and firm dragon scale. The long sword actually sliced through and only left a white mark on his shoulder. At the same time, a terrifying force pierced through Fong Tong's abdomen. Qin Feng's hand fiercely shook and immediately broke open Fong Tong's abdomen, completely piercing through it. Fong Tong's face instantly drained of color. He looked at Qin Feng with lifeless eyes. What kind of fist technique is this? How is this possible? Qin Feng pulled back his hand and looked at Fong Tong, whose vitality was gradually dissipating. This is the black tortoise yin yang wei, the black tortoise dragon yi. The black tortoise is still, and the spirit serpent is moving. The black tortoise is divided into the black tortoise chi and the spirit serpent chi. My entire body is covered in the black tortoise chi, formed by the black tortoise si subduing fist. Your longsword can't even cut a single hair on my body. On the contrary, the spirit serpent chi, wrapped in my spirit serpent demon fist, can break through your defense. The black tortoise yin yang wei was a true martial level fist technique that was both offense and defense and defense. The most wonderful thing was the combination of movement and silence. Defense with quietness, attack with movement. After he used the black tortoise fist technique, he could turn into an airtight tortoise shell. No matter how you hit him, the force would be absorbed by the tortoise shell formed by the fist technique. He used the black tortoise Tong, the dragon of Tong fist of the fist demon dragon. If he used the black tortoise yin yang dao, he would have the advantages of both when controlling the tortoise and the snake, the defense of the tortoise and the craftiness of the snake, of Qin of the combination of yin and yang, movement and stillness. That's why I said that I, who have mastered the black tortoise yin yang dao, am absolutely qualified to kill a martial artist of the fourth heavenly layer. From the very beginning, you were not my opponent. When you were nagging and lecturing me, you were just a clown. I was only showing you your sanctimonious appearance because you were about to die. Qin Feng glanced at his bloody and wet hands and conveniently wiped them on Fong Tong's luxurious and soft brocade clothes as he said with a smile. You? Fong Tong stared at Qin Feng and pointed at Qin Feng. He spat out a mouthful of blood and slowly fell to the ground. He died with his eyes wide open. Fong Tong, a martial artist of the fourth firmament of the martial path, was dead. Whoosh, whoosh. Qin Feng exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. His body was sore and limp as if he had collapsed. He leaned against the bronze cauldron without a care for his image. His arms were burning with pain, and his muscles and bones were sore. The black tortoise Yin Wei looked powerful, but it consumed a lot of energy to use. If he had not swallowed the black tortoise divine elixir and cultivated the flawless holy body, he would not have been able to withstand it. The strength of a martial artist of the fourth firmament of the martial path was indeed extraordinary. Qin Feng felt that dealing with him alone was more tiring than dealing with 6 elite teams of second and third firmament of the martial path. It seems that my current combat strength is only equivalent to a martial artist of the late fourth firmament of the martial path. If 2 masters like Fong Tong came, I'm afraid I could only run away. Qin Feng recalled the battle tonight and found that he was not as strong as he had imagined. In his original estimation, his combat strength should be equivalent to a martial artist of the fifth firmament of the martial path. However, it seemed that he had overestimated it. The reason was that although he had mastered countless secret techniques and had a very high vision, most of them could not be used freely because of his body. For example, in his vision, there were many flaws in Fong Tong's swordsmanship. He clearly knew how to break the 13 Thunder Prison Swords, but he could not do it. More often than not, when he fought, the quality of his body limited his martial skills and could not be used smoothly. This was the reason why he had a short cultivation time. However, as time passed, he was confident that he could make up for this shortcoming and improve his combat strength in a short period of time. At this moment, countless fist and palm techniques were running through his mind. As long as he was willing to spend time, his combat strength would improve greatly in a short period of time and completely solve this problem. Summing up all kinds of battle just now, Qin Feng recovered a little of his strength. Time was tight, and the surrounding area was filled with the Qin family's search teams. He did not know when this place would attract the attention of those search teams. Qin Feng stood up, walked forward quickly, and searched Fong Tong's body. Fong Tong's status was much higher than those people. Qin Feng casually searched and found more than a dozen banknotes worth more than 1,000. This was a windfall. What made Qin Feng even more surprised was that he also found level 1 quenching origin pills and level 1 quenching origin pills on Fong Tong's body. Compared to the dozen banknotes worth more than 1,000, Qin Feng valued these 2 bottles of medicinal pills more. With these 2 bottles of medicinal pills, plus the medicinal pills that he had scavenged before, he no longer needed to worry about the cultivation of medicinal pills before the 5th firmament of martial Dao. The last thing was Fong Tong's personal weapon, the silver-white sharp ancient sword. Although Qin Feng was not good at swordsmanship, he loved swords all his life. Compared to the cumbersome bronze cauldron, he preferred this kind of sword-shaped weapon. He immediately picked up this long sword and attached it to his waist. After searching, Qin Feng did not stay any longer. He hastily cleaned up the scene and immediately disappeared into the dense forest. This time, he changed his direction and decided not to return to Upper River Town for the time being. Instead, he headed toward the depths of the desolate mountain range. The fight between Qin Feng and Fong Tong was not small. This mountain forest had already attracted the attention of the search team. Not long after he left, a search team of 8 or 9 people came to the place where he left. The leader was a warrior of the 3rd firmament of martial Dao. This was a very cautious and shrewd middle-aged man. He was dressed in short clothes. His eyes flickered and his footsteps were very light. He seemed to be very vigilant. If something went wrong, he would immediately hide behind a tree. The smell of blood is getting stronger and stronger. Everyone be careful. Maybe that person is behind the bushes. Look, there's a dead man here. Pushing aside the bushes, a searching warrior suddenly shouted. The other companions heard the shout and hurried over. Everyone's eyes fell on the field in front of the bushes. A bronze cauldron stood alone in the bushes. Not far from the bronze cauldron, a figure stared in this direction with his eyes wide open. The leading warrior of the 3rd firmament of martial Dao rushed over and looked at it in horror. "No, it's Fong Tong, Mr. Fong. It can't be. Did you see wrongly?" The other searching warriors' faces changed greatly. They rushed over as fast as they could, looking at the figure who died with his eyes wide open. A trace of fear flashed in their eyes. Fong Tong had died here, an expert of the middle stage of the fourth firmament of martial Tao, whom their whole team might not be able to defeat, had died silently here. Wasn't that person a waste? How could he kill Fong Tong of the fourth firmament of martial Tao? This was terrible. A warrior of the fourth firmament of martial Tao was also important in the Qin family. He was the backbone of the family. The death of one was already considered to have damaged the family's vitality. Soon, a shrill scream sounded in this forest. For a moment, countless figures rushed out of the quiet forest. Fong Tong. When Qin Miyun heard the news and dared to come, he saw the tragic figure beside the bronze cauldron. His legs almost went soft. He knew he was completely finished this time. Fong Tong was the core figure of Qin Miyun's forces. Without Fong Tong, the forces gathered under his command would immediately fall apart. He would completely lose the qualification to compete for the successor of the family head. Qin Miyun's hands and feet were cold, his head was a little dizzy, and his face was pale. Chapter 26. Qin Miyun left disheartened because he had completely lost the ability to participate in this game. The other young masters of the Qin clan were all chatting and laughing as they watched Qin Miyun leave. Qin Miyun's despondency didn't deter them. Instead, it made them even more certain that Qin Feng must have obtained some great benefits. The young masters of the Qin clan and even the elders who were hiding in the depths were mobilizing their forces. The young masters' eyes flickered as they secretly sent out their trusted subordinates, vowing to capture Qin Feng. More and more martial artists of the fourth sky of the martial path appeared in the periphery of the barbaric mountain and began to participate in the search. The movements of the Qin clan had been quietly observed by the other major powers who had been paying attention to the Qin clan's movements. One of the powers near Upper River Town, the Yu clan of Lower River Town, and the Ning clan of Mountain River Town, had sent out spies to investigate what had caused the Qin clan to mobilize their experts so frequently. Qin Feng was heading towards the depths of the barbaric mountain. Naturally, he didn't change his direction to escape. He was never a person who didn't fight back after suffering a loss. Qin Qingshan's scheme and the unreasonable pursuit of the Qin clan. He was now filled with anger. Even if someone begged him, he wouldn't leave. He wanted to take revenge viciously. The reason why he was heading towards the depths of the barbaric mountain was to avoid the Qin clan's search. Qin Feng understood the principle of not standing under a collapsing wall. Knowing that there was a trap ahead, it would be foolish to rush in and fight to the death with the enemy. He was doing this to jump out of the encirclement and seize the initiative. For a few days, he transformed into a night spirit and shuttled back and forth in the periphery of the barbaric mountain. He hid during the day and rested during the day to avoid the pursuit of the Qin clan's experts. Every night, he would come back from the depths of the barbaric mountain and slaughter the martial artists who came to search for him. In 3 days, the number of Qin clan search teams that died in his hands was no less than 30. The number of Qin clan's elites that were severely injured by him was a shocking number of 260. The Qin clan claimed to have 800 elite disciples. This number was very shocking. It meant that almost 1/3 of the Qin clan's elites had died in his hands. For this greed, the Qin clan paid a terrible price. He became the inescapable nightmare of the Qin clan's disciples. The enmity between him and the Qin clan had already risen to the point where they would not rest until one of them was dead. In the past few days, Qin Feng had clearly sensed the changes in the periphery of the barbaric mountains. Some of the Qin clan's disciples who were below the third heavenly layer had already begun to retreat. The large-scale losses had already reached a level that made the Qin clan's flesh ache. The Qin clan's people clearly also realized that the third heavenly layer warriors were no longer able to harm Qin Feng. Those who remained were the backbone of the fourth heavenly layer and above. Qin Feng didn't know about the changes in the mountain. He was cleaning up the loot he got from killing people these days. His harvest was unexpectedly rich. As the saying goes, a man can't be rich without a windfall, and a horse can't be fat without feeding at night. Qin Feng had killed more than 30 teams of Qin clan's elites. He had obtained dozens of banknotes worth 1,000 taels of silver, and even more banknotes worth 100 taels of silver. In total, he had obtained nearly 100,000 taels of silver. This was a huge sum of money, comparable to the taxes collected by Upper River Town. This amount did not include the 3 pieces of silver that Qin Feng had thrown away. If it was included, it would probably be more than this amount. He also found 2 bottles of high-grade essence quenching pills, 5 bottles of mid-grade essence quenching pills, 8 bottles of high-grade essence quenching pills, 11 bottles of mid-grade essence quenching pills. In addition, there were low-grade essence quenching pills, as well as some miscellaneous pills. Qin Feng even found a precious rank 1 Qi recovery pill on a martial artist at the late stage of the 3rd heaven of the martial path. The essence recovery pill was a very precious pill. 1 pill could immediately restore most of one's physical strength and even inner breath. This kind of elixir could play an unimaginable role at a critical moment. Its value was even higher than that of a high-grade essence quenching pill. 1 pill was worth hundreds of gold. Finally, there were dozens of secret manuals. These secret manuals were mostly human martial-level secret manuals, and their value was not high. Moreover, there were many repetitions. There were only 2 most valuable secret manuals. One was a low-grade spirit martial-level martial skill, the Wind Spirit Disorienting Sword Technique. The other was an incomplete mid-grade spirit martial-level saber technique, the 100 Meridians Returning Saber Technique. Qin Feng found a very secretive cave on a mountain peak in the barbaric mountain range. He hid all the silver notes, secret manuals, and pills except for a few on his body. Then, he took out a bottle of high-grade bone quenching pills from his personal collection. He took out 1 pill and, as usual, began to operate his fist technique to digest the pill. There was a burst of crackling sounds of bones in the cave, and a blazing force expanded. These days, other than going out every night to find trouble with the Qin clan disciples, he would swallow a high-grade bone quenching pill when he came back. He would operate his fists and feet to refine the pill. Then, he would go out to kill the Qin clan warriors. He would use the Qin clan warriors as whetstones to stabilize his strength. In these 2 days, he was already showing signs of breaking through to the late-stage 3rd heavenly layer. This was the result of him forcibly suppressing the speed of his cultivation. He wanted to build a solid foundation. If he cultivated freely, it would not be difficult for him to break through to the 4th heavenly layer. Qin Feng made a fortune in the barbaric mountain range and quietly cultivated. However, the Qin clan had fallen into a slump. At the foot of the mountain, in the camp, Qin Feng's face was gloomy. The young masters of the Qin clan below him were all silent. Some of them even had a pale face. Their eyes revealed a sense of unwillingness, anger, and fear. No one would have thought that, in just a few days, the Qin clan would suffer such a big setback in the hands of a loser that they used to look down on. Qin Feng's counterattack was extremely fierce. Like a sharp knife, it stabbed into the belly of the Qin clan again and again. 3 days, in just 3 days, the Qin clan had lost almost 1/3 of their elites. This was an incomparably terrifying number. 1/3 of the elites were all living disciples of the Qin clan. They were the backbone of many of the Qin clan's assets. When they were lost, it meant that some of the assets of the Qin clan that they supported would also be burned down. It was like digging out a large piece of flesh from the Qin clan. The most terrifying thing was that there were many consequential effects. Some of the caravans and shops that the Qin clan had set up in other places would be completely affected. If not for the higher-ups of the Qin clan, the backbone of the Qin clan, and the timely appearance of the Patriarch to control the situation, the Qin clan would have been completely disbanded. A single person had defeated an entire clan. This was simply a fantasy. Qin Feng rubbed his swollen temples. He had a splitting headache. Who would have thought that Qin Feng would be so tenacious? His counterattack was so terrifying and fierce. Not only could he escape from the Qin clan's tight encirclement, but he also launched a surprise counterattack. At this moment, Qin Muhan, who was sitting below, suddenly spoke out angrily. It's all because of that trash old sixth. If it wasn't for him blowing up the matter, how could the clan be so careless as to simply scatter the elite disciples and give Qin Feng, that little bastard, a chance to kill? You can't say that. Sixth brother only led his own men to search. He is not the decision-maker of the clan and can't mobilize the elites of the clan. A collateral disciple sneered. After saying that, he vaguely glanced at Qin Shu, who had her head lowered and her eyes focused on her nose. He was one of the eldest young master, Qin Shu's men. Soon, another disciple stood up to criticize. The big tent was filled with the smell of gunpowder for a moment. A few elders in the corner looked at this scene sadly. At this time, these young masters were still fighting among themselves, trying to shirk responsibility and attack the opponent. It seemed that the Qin clan had really declined. The only one who did not speak in the tent was Qin Feng. Qin Feng was suffering unspeakable. Although he was not the one who started the chase, he was the one who called the shots here. Although the brothers here were arguing and pointing at each other, in fact, they were all secretly squeezing him, the future leader of the Qin clan. Now, many people in the Qin clan were secretly pointing at him. He was previously rumored to be the leader of the Qin clan's revival. Now that the Qin clan had suffered such a great loss, many people were discussing and questioning him behind his back. The prestige that he had built up with great difficulty was greatly challenged. Qin Feng's counterattack not only hit the Qin clan hard, but also hit him, the future leader of the Qin clan. Vaguely, Qin Feng knew that if he could not catch Qin Feng this time and seize the opportunity, he was afraid that he would suffer an unimaginable backfire. He had reason to believe that at that time, those people in the Qin clan who had nowhere to vent their anger would point their spears at him. He would become the sinner who caused the decline of the Qin clan. Young master, don't worry, we still have a chance. As long as the law enforcement team can catch Qin Feng, you can seize his opportunity and all the crises in front of you will be resolved. Beside him, a confidant said with a smile. Although angry, Qin Feng did not lose his mind because of this. This confidant said what was in his heart. Hearing this, Qin Feng's face showed a trace of coldness. He gnashed his teeth and said, "That's right, Qin Feng, this little bastard, is nothing. How can he be compared with me? I don't believe that this little bastard can escape from the law enforcement team. Everything he has will belong to me sooner or later." Master, you didn't misjudge him. At this time, the hunchbacked butler Qin Zhong came out from behind him. He looked gentle with a kind smile. He said with a smile, "What kind of person is Qin Feng? He's just a lowly person. What capabilities does he have to be worthy of receiving such a fortuitous encounter? Even if he relied on a little bit of cleverness and temporarily obtained some benefits, he still wouldn't be able to hold on to such a fortuitous encounter. In less than a day, all of his benefits would belong to the seventh young master. He is destined to become the stepping stone of the seventh young master. Only the seventh young master can lead the Qin clan and make the Qin clan stronger." Looking at Qin Feng, who kept nodding, he said with a faint smile, "When old master was young, he met a peerless expert. This peerless expert once gave old master pointers. He said that within 3 generations of the Qin clan, there would definitely be a leader who would lead the Qin clan to the peak. This person was the seventh young master. This is a peerless expert. He has the ability to change the world. Every word of his is the way of heaven. What he said will never be wrong. Don't worry, seventh young master." Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded. His eyes showed confidence and pride again. The hunchbacked old man Qin Zhong said with a satisfied smile, "Although this brat Qin Feng has temporarily obtained the Tao of Fortune, his Tao of Fortune will ultimately converge on the seventh young master. The people of the law enforcement hall have already made arrangements. I believe he won't be able to escape for long. As long as we capture him and force him to hand over the Tao of Fortune, the seventh young master will definitely be able to step on his head and soar up to the heavens. Chapter 27. Whoosh, whoosh. In a hidden cave in the depths of the wilderness, chi and blood were boiling. A figure was moving around in the cave like a snake. His punches were full of energy and were extremely agile. He seemed to have transformed into a green dragon snake. His punches and kicks were accompanied by the sound of rumbling thunder. If there was a martial artist here, he would know that this was the sound of chi and blood flowing. Only when one's chi and blood were as pure as spring thunder would such a sound be produced. This was an important sign of the completion of the third sky of the martial path. Bang! A figure suddenly went from extreme movement to extreme stillness. His chest was violently moving up and down like a bellows. The rumbling sound was accompanied by the rumbling of spring thunder, tempering his internal organs. Steam gradually rose from the top of his head. His face was as red as fire, like a prawn. Puff! Suddenly, he opened his eyes, opened his mouth, and spat out a faint black arrow of chi. What was surprising was that this chi actually pierced into the stone wall with a sizzling sound. His figure gradually appeared under the morning sun. His slender body was slightly thin, his skin was slightly pale, and his straight body was like a sharp sword. His shoulder-length black hair hung behind his waist, and his slender eyes opened with a hint of dominance. The completion of the third sky of the martial path. Pure blood like spring thunder. Qin Feng waved his arm. His skin was as smooth as white jade. There was a layer of luster on his skin, as if it was a perfect work of art. He took a breath. The blood in his body flowed like a river from the ninth heaven, rumbling. It was like the sound of spring thunder, full of vitality. He used his fingernail to make a cut under his skin. What was surprising was that he could clearly see blood flowing through the cut, but not a single drop of blood flowed out. It was as if his chi had locked all the essence chi in his body and restrained it. He forcefully squeezed out a drop of blood. The drop of blood was as thick as a blood bead. It had a heavy texture. The blood is pure. This blood bead already has some spiritual chi. If I continue to refine it, I might be able to derive Taoist rhymes and produce unpredictable changes. Rumor has it that there is a boundless sea of blood beneath the spirit sea continent. This sea of blood was formed by a drop of blood from an ancient almighty. Qin Feng knew that if one's blood was refined to the extreme, it could even give birth to some terrifying divine abilities. However, many people couldn't do this. Only some people with special physiques could do this. For example, Qin Feng was very familiar with a physique called the blood demon physique. Speaking of the blood fiend body, Qin Feng somewhat missed his little maidservant, Red Lotus. That last was the current master of the blood fiend body, the future blood fiend, great demon god. However, the lass, Red Lotus, had yet to begin cultivating. To become a blood fiend demon god, she probably still had a long way to go. That little girl had received his instructions and should have gone into hiding by now. Perhaps she was worried about his situation somewhere. With a faint smile, he stretched out his slender and white fingers. His fingertips were as white as scallions, slender and powerful. It was as if there was an invisible world at his fingertips, and if he clenched his fist, he could crush the air. Qin Feng looked at the vast sea of clouds in front of the cave with a faint look of anticipation. He thought to himself, after the third heaven of the martial path, next is the fourth heaven of the martial path, chi sense. Only by comprehending chi sense can one truly embark on the martial path's path to godhood. Great, the infinite mystic Tao, who doesn't seek spiritual medicine. Enlighten the three lights into the blue sky, nourishing all things and blooming flowers and calyx, soaring through the present and past, never tasting bad, never weak in the face of dangers and difficulties. The mighty torrent surges and expands. Who cares? The primordial unity chi is the first to rise and change. The supreme primordial unity chi is the only evil. Stepping through the void and out of the netherworld, opening up the chaos to create squandering. Yin and yang rise and fall as the door, the sun and moon as the key. Summer passes and cold comes, day and night divide. The flow of time, the rise and fall of the fortress, the rise and fall of the fortress, the rise and fall of the heaven and earth button, the call of Master Fan Duo below. Qin Feng walked out of the cave and recited a very famous poem in the Spirit Sea continent. This poem was precisely used to describe the fourth heaven of the martial path. The beginning of all things came from the primordial unity Qi. The primordial unity Qi gave birth to the supernatural power. At this time, on the horizon, a golden crow jumped out. The golden sunlight fell on the white sea of clouds on the mountainside and spread out. The golden light was vast and boundless. The sea of clouds rippled, layer upon layer, as if it was a sacred realm of immortals. Specks of golden light fell on his body, making him look like a celestial being. In front of the mountainside, there was a small stone platform. Standing on the platform, a cool breeze blew past, as if blowing into his heart. Qin Feng slightly closed his eyes and opened his arms, as if returning to the embrace of the wind. He felt a kind of relaxation that he had never felt before, as if he had left the mortal body and was happily swimming with the cool breeze that was everywhere. An invisible rhythm appeared in his mind, and a trace of understanding flashed in his heart. It turned out that the wind also had its own rhythm. The wind was everywhere, but the wind also had its own rhythm. At this time, as his emotions were surging, Qin Feng actually fell into a rare moment of enlightenment. He had originally comprehended a trace of the concept of wind, and after this moment of enlightenment, that wisp of wind concept gradually took root and sprouted, progressing to a deeper level. Qin Feng followed this wisp of wind and felt as if he was flying, turning into a cool breeze that blew into the sea of clouds, into the mountain stream, into the sea, and into a pool of spring water. On the stone platform, a gust of wind that did not dissipate gradually appeared beside him. This gust of wind surrounded him, blowing at the ends of his hair. His shoulder-length black hair danced in the wind, and a wind-like elegance appeared between his brows. A strange thing happened. His body was wrapped in this cool breeze, and his body emitted a wind-like aura. With him, as the center, a layer of invisible ripples appeared. Affected by this layer of ripples, the cool breeze was born out of thin air and wrapped around him, as if it had become one with him. His body suddenly moved, and his ape arms stretched out. His body moved, and a human shadow soared into the sky. In one leap, it was dozens of feet high. When it landed, it was incomparably slow, as if it was weightless, like a feather. His body landed on the ground, and his fists and feet vibrated with an invisible rhythm. If there were experts of the Qin family here, they would know that this was a set of basic fist techniques of the Qin family. Wild Wind Bone Forging Fist. However, this set of mortal martial level Wild Wind Bone Forging Fist seemed to have a charm in the hands of Qin Feng. It actually displayed a power that was even more exquisite than a spirit martial level fist technique. This set of fist techniques seemed to have undergone a complete transformation in his hands, and its form and spirit were both wonderful. Moreover, it was supported by a profound martial concept, and its power was unpredictable. The concept of martial arts was a prerequisite for the sixth heavenly layer of the martial path to enter the seventh heavenly layer of the martial path. Only by comprehending the concept of martial arts could one cross the chasm between the sixth heavenly layer of the martial path and the seventh heavenly layer of the martial path. Only by comprehending the concept could one cross the chasm between the sixth heavenly layer of the martial path and the seventh heavenly layer of the martial path. Chapter 28. The essence of wind had many branches, including the wild wind essence, cool wind essence, hurricane essence, freedom essence, and so on. This time, Qin Feng comprehended the essence of Qin Feng's essence of wind. In addition to the wild wind essence that Qin Feng had comprehended, he had comprehended two essences of wind. What made Qin Feng most happy was that this unexpected epiphany had solidified his foundation that had been shaken due to taking too many elixirs. His qi and blood were in perfect harmony, and he had truly reached the completion of the third sky of the martial path. A faint joy could be seen on Qin Feng's face. Under the sunlight, his body was tall and slender, as straight as a sword. Stretching out his arms, he stretched out a slender and fair palm. Under the sunlight, his 5 fingers were long and slender, emitting a faint jade-like glow. His eyes moved as if there was some brilliance flashing, with a trace of charming brilliance. Handsome, jade-like face, handsome figure, and unrestrained behavior. He was like a jade tree in the wind, making people forget him. If someone saw him at this time, it would be difficult to associate him with the skinny and sickly person lying on the bed half a month ago. Looking at the sky, Qin Feng thought in his heart, a 15-year-old completion of the third sky of the martial path. I think the Qin clan is very outstanding. The genius of the Qin clan, Qin Feng, who is known as the leader of the Qin clan's resurgence, is only at the completion of the third sky of the martial path. And I, Qin Feng, am a few months younger than Qin Feng. If I go back now, the elders of the Qin clan will probably stare their eyes out. Qin Feng smiled and muttered to himself with a leisurely expression. I really want to see the faces of those elders when they see their hope, their leader of the Qin clan's resurgence, being trampled under my feet. It must be very interesting. He waved his arm, and his palm lightly withdrew. However, the air shook violently, and layers of palm prints appeared. It was as if thousands of hands were attacking at the same time, causing a violent explosion in the air. Only when the speed reached a certain level would it leave an afterimage in the air. Qin Feng estimated in his heart that after this epiphany, even if he met a martial artist of the 5th heavenly layer, he would dare to compete. Next, he had to comprehend the sense of qi and condense his inner breath, striving to reach the 4th firmament of martial arts. Qin Feng knew that this required time. In order to comprehend qi, one must first adjust one's essence, qi, and spirit to their peak state. He needed a battle. Only under the pressure of life and death could he unleash his greatest potential. Only in an intense collision could the most dazzling and beautiful sparks be born. His qi and blood were boiling, and at that moment his qi was the strongest. Of course, there was another option, but Qin Feng disdained it. This method relied on meditation, and breathing in extreme silence to temper the internal organs and nurture the sense of qi. There were many taboos to this method. First of all, one had to clear one's heart of desires and eliminate all distractions from the outside world. One had to try their best to prevent emotional fluctuations. One also had to abstain from sexual desires, as well as other taboos. Moreover, this method required comprehension, or one's own luck. If one was lucky, one could immediately comprehend qi. If one was unlucky, it would not be surprising to wait at this threshold for years, or even decades. For example, Qin Feng, who was known as the genius of the Qin family, had reached the peak of the 3rd firmament of martial arts long ago. However, after a year, he was still stuck at the peak of the 3rd firmament of martial arts, unable to comprehend qi. He was still unable to reach the 4th firmament of martial arts. So, next I need a battle. Qin Feng smiled faintly. Suddenly his eyes moved. Looking down from the mountainside, he saw countless birds in the forest below. Startled. You finally chased me all the way here? There was no surprise in his eyes as he chuckled. Someone sent me a pillow when I was sleepy. His body moved, disappearing from the cave like a snake. Half an hour later, he appeared at the foot of the mountain. His figure was like a bolt of lightning as he leaped and landed on a rock. His eyes were filled with fierce, killing intent as he scanned the surroundings. Behind him was a towering mountain peak with dense forests. The surroundings were lush forests, and birds and beasts flew about in front of him. He narrowed his eyes and stared at the area where the birds and beasts were startled. He sneered and disappeared behind the green rock in a flash. In less than 15 minutes, a rustling sound of footsteps came from 100 steps away. A few figures flashed and appeared near the green rock. Qin Feng stood behind a rock and looked at the 4 people who suddenly appeared. The four people were dressed in tight clothes, and each of them had the strength of the fourth firmament of martial arts. They are from the law enforcement hall. His eyes narrowed, and he immediately noticed that there was an evil silver-white dragon embroidered on the four people's clothes. This was the symbol of the law enforcement hall of the Qin family. The law enforcement hall was an important hall where the elite disciples of the Qin family gathered. It was in charge of the law enforcement of the Qin family. Only the backbone of the fourth firmament of martial arts could enter the law enforcement hall. In the Qin family, the law enforcement hall had a high status and only obeyed the orders of the head of the family. It was a bloody and ominous hall. Almost everyone was afraid of it. Nothing good would happen once it appeared. In a flash, Qin Feng knew that he was in big trouble this time. The elites of the law enforcement hall could not be compared to the disciples of the Qin family that he could kill at will. Those who could enter the law enforcement hall were not easy to deal with. They were all battle-hardened elites. The aura of these four people was flawless. Their footwork was calm, and their eyes were shining. They were very vigilant and had an oppressive aura. It was obvious that they were people who had killed countless people with their hands stained with blood. These four people are definitely strong enemies. While Qin Feng was contemplating, the eyes of the four flashed as they surveyed the surroundings. The ears of one of them twitched as he spoke in a hoarse voice. "It should be here. He stopped here a day ago." Another person doubted. "Are you sure?" This person's eyes were shining as he looked around with vigilance. He said in a hoarse voice, "Don't you trust me? I have been proficient in the language of beasts since I was young. I can understand the language of birds and beasts. Just now, I heard some birds talking about someone living in the mountain and occupying the nest of a cave-dwelling mountain bear." The second person smiled embarrassedly. He could hear the dissatisfaction in the first person's voice and whispered, "Then listen to where he is now." Qin Feng was hiding behind the green rock. When he heard the conversation between the two people, he was shocked and thought quickly. This person is actually gifted and can even understand the language of birds and beasts. There is such a capable person in the Qin family. Then, Qin Feng's heart skipped a beat as he knew that things were not good. Since this guy can understand the language of birds and beasts, then my whereabouts are... He looked up and saw ants crawling on the green rock not far away. There were birds flapping their wings and flying above him. That person's eyes landed on the place where he was hiding. He pointed at the green rock and shouted, "Everyone, be careful. He is behind the green rock." Chapter 29. Qin Feng didn't know that the four law enforcement team that chased him to the foot of the setting sun peak weren't ordinary law enforcement hall disciples. They were the elites of the elites. All four of them had their own specialties and were experts in martial Dao battle formations. What was martial Dao battle formations? It was a technique that allowed the few to fight against the many. This was a secret technique that used Xian formation as a foundation and combined with martial Dao secret techniques. When many people worked together, they could unleash 2, 3, or even 10 times their usual strength. Battle formations were very precious and rare. A battle formation technique was relied on by a clan to gain a foothold. It was a secret technique that could reverse the universe. There were hundreds of towns around Shana City. Each town was occupied by a large clan, but the number of clans that could possess a secret inheritance battle formation was less than 5. The Qin clan had an inheritance battle formation that allowed them to gain a foothold in Upper River Town and establish a foundation for hundreds of years. These four people were experts in a four-spirit demon subduing battle formation. The moment Qin Feng appeared, the four people almost instinctively used a joint attack to trap Qin Feng. As they walked, it was like a huge four symbols roulette, sealing the space around Qin Feng. Battle formation? Qin Feng's face slightly changed. He immediately saw through the mystery of the four people's movements. "Little bastard, you still have some eyes." Among the four people, a middle-aged man around 30 years old smiled faintly. He was around 30 years old, tall and sturdy, with a tiger's back and a bear's waist. His face was sinister, and he carried a single blade on his back. His body was filled with a stifling aura. His face revealed a trace of a sneer as he fell into the battle formation. Qin Feng already had half a foot in the gates of hell. This time, he couldn't escape even if he had wings. What is a mere primary battle formation? I have broken countless intermediate battle formations and even advanced battle formations. Showing off your battle formation in front of an array grandmaster. You really don't know how to write the word death. Qin Feng disdained in his heart. However, this middle-aged man's tone made Qin Feng frown. This voice and tone were familiar in his memory. He searched for it in his mind. After a moment, he slowly raised his head and said, "You are Qin Yu. Bold Qin Feng, you dare to call Lord Qin Yu by his full name. How dare you?" On the side, a man with a long face immediately jumped out and shouted, "No matter." Qin Yu casually waved his hand. His gaze was cold as he stared at Qin Feng. There was a trace of pity in his eyes. "Don't care about the people who are about to die." After he finished speaking, he changed Qin Yu's words. Qin Yu's Qin Zhan, SSS family. TSU's not only killed Qin Yu. He smiled. The coldness in his eyes grew even more intense. The gaze he used to look at Qin Feng was like a venomous snake staring at its prey. At this moment, victory was within his grasp, and he was filled with complacency. There was even a sense of joy from revenge in his heart as he joked with the three people beside him. Maybe you guys don't know what kind of genius Qin Zhan was back then. At the age of 10, he began to reveal his cultivation talent. Before the age of 14, he had cultivated to the third heavenly layer of the martial Tao. Following that, during the trial, he suppressed everyone. Even the few geniuses of the clan master's direct descendants couldn't breathe under his pressure. At that time, I could only look up to Qin Zhan and could only watch as he ascended to Shawnee City. Qin Zhan's heroic appearance had attracted the favor of countless noble ladies of Mountain River City. Unfortunately, he had a shameless and extremely vicious good brother. Qin Feng's mouth evoked a trace of sneer. He nodded and continued Qin Yu's words. His shameless good brother flattered him when he was in his glory, licked his face, and shamelessly made friends with him in every possible way. He almost relied on kneeling at his feet to gain his trust. Of course, behind his back, he borrowed Qin Zhan's name to obtain countless benefits. Thus, he quickly rose with a very mediocre aptitude. However, after Qin Zhan's death, this vicious good brother was the first to jump out. He seized all of Qin Zhan's property and even his concubines. Moreover, he viciously chased his good brother's only son to a remote place. Qin Feng sneered and said, "Don't you think such a person is a shameless beast in human skin?" Seeing Qin Yu's ashen face, several people looked at each other. Qin Feng laughed and said while pointing at Qin Yu, "Yes, you may have guessed it. This beast is Qin Yu, the only son of the law enforcement hall's elder Qin Ming. Under his sanctimonious disguise, he is a beast with a human face and a beast's heart. He is worse than a beast. Little bastard." Qin Yu's face was red. Seeing Qin Feng pointing at him, his face instantly turned into the color of pig liver. His 5 fingers clenched and his knuckles turned ashen. His lungs were about to explode from anger. Seeing the flickering expression of the 3 people around him, Qin Yu flew into a rage out of humiliation and roared loudly. "What are you waiting for? Go kill this little bastard." Clang! For sounds of metal clashing rang out, and a burst of sharp cold air swept over. The cold air surged like a flood. From the place where the blade light rose, for faint blade shadows flashed and shrouded Qin Feng's body. Qin family's spirit martial level blade technique. It was the same blade technique, but when these 4 elites of the law enforcement hall used it, the power was completely different from when other people used it. The blade light was dense like a storm. He wanted to destroy the enemies in front of him as easily as crushing dry weeds. Qin Feng's face was dignified. He did not expect that the joint attack of these 4 people would be so fierce. Perhaps even a strong warrior of the 5th sky of the martial path would not dare to face the joint attack of these 4 people. Although the four spirits subduing demon battle formation is only a very simple primary battle formation, when it is used by four martial artists of the fourth heavenly layer, it is as if the four of them, who are scattered like sand, have been united into a complete group. Their chi resonates with each other, forming a dynamic formation that traps, kills, and exterminates all in one body. Even a martial artist of the fifth heavenly layer would be defeated. If I was only an ordinary martial artist of the peak of the third heavenly layer, I would definitely die here. Qin Feng's eyes flashed, and his face turned cold. However, he was not an ordinary warrior of the peak third sky of the martial path. With a move of his feet, Qin Feng's figure, like a phantom, penetrated the seemingly airtight blade light, like a ghost. Like a shuttle, he directly disappeared into the brilliant blade light. His figure was like a phantom wind, rolling up clear ripples under the mocking eyes of the four people. You are indeed an ignorant kid. Young and impetuous, you dare to charge into the formation alone. Ignorant kid, you're looking for death. Qin Feng laughed to the sky. Just as Qin Feng had said, the four spirits demon subduing formation was only a primary battle formation. It did not have the terrifying amplification effect of an intermediate battle formation. But the primary battle formation had an extremely important function, which was to fit. To fit the power of four warriors of the fourth sky of the martial path, it was not as simple as 1 + 1. From a certain point of view, the four of them were like a blade expert of the middle fifth sky of the martial path. The 9 heavens of the martial path, each layer was a layer of heaven. The difference between the third sky and the fourth sky of the martial path was enormous. The difference of 1 layer of heaven was enormous. Not to mention the difference of 2 layers of heaven between the third sky of the martial path and the fifth sky of the martial path. This kind of difference in strength was enormous. The first thing the four thought of was to prevent Qin Feng from escaping, and then to trap and kill him. They did not expect Qin Feng to make a muddle-headed move and fight to the death with them, which was exactly what they wanted. The gazes of the four changed, from the original cautious to the current relaxed, and a mocking smile appeared on their faces. As long as they were in the formation, no matter how powerful Qin Feng was, they were completely confident that they could trap and even kill Qin Feng. Qin Yu's face had a trace of a sinister smile. Ignorant kid, you're looking for death. You can't blame others. A toad yawning, what a big tone. A few vicious dogs of the law enforcement hall are starting to dream in broad daylight. A disdainful sneer came from the center of the formation, and the four were so angry that their eyes were spitting fire. Qin Feng's movement technique was very fast. After comprehending the concept of cool breeze, he integrated all of his understanding of the concept of cool breeze into the cool breeze spirit refining pillar and violent wind bone forging fist, forming a strange movement technique. This movement technique looked very simple, but when it was used, it was invisible like a cool breeze scattering into the dense forest. The four formed the four spirits battle formation like layers upon layers of lush forest, and he was a cool breeze. No matter how dense the forest was, there was enough space for the cool breeze to pass through. What kind of movement technique is this? The four's faces changed color. The four figures were like blooming fireworks, turning into 4 figures and landing in 4 different directions. The four's faces were gloomy as they stared at the center of the formation, at Qin Feng with a sneer on his face. Qin Feng's movement technique was too slippery. Even the four spirits subduing devil battle formation that they had always been proud of could not trap him. They had never seen such an exquisite and flexible movement technique, but why did this movement technique have a familiar feeling? It seemed to have the shadow of the cool breeze spirit refining pillar and violent wind bone forging fist. However, those were only 2 basic mortal martial level techniques. How could they have such a magical effect? It must be an illusion. The four denied this speculation one after another. This was too hard to believe. Could it be that this is one of the good fortunes that Qin Zhang left for him? Qin Yu guessed. He felt that he had guessed the answer. His eyes stared at Qin Feng, burning with a touch of unconcealable passion. If I can get this movement technique, I will be able to calmly deal with a martial artist of the fifth heavenly layer. What virtue and ability did this little bastard have to be able to enjoy such a legacy? His eyes turned red as he stopped his long saber and slowly said to Qin Feng, "Qin Feng, you can't escape today. The four spirits subduing devil battle formation is far more powerful than this. We have yet to use the strongest four spirits combined attack. Once it is used, even a martial artist of the fifth heavenly layer would not be able to withstand it. I will give you one last chance. Hand over the benefits you obtained from Qin Zhan, and I will spare your life. Otherwise, your life will be in danger today." Qin Feng was startled. He felt strange. What does this have to do with Qin Zhan? Could it be that Qin Zhan still has some benefits? Soon after, his thoughts changed, and he suddenly realized that these people had misunderstood. Obviously, these people did not know about the Six Cauldron Ancient Temple. Instead, they thought that he had something to do with that cheap father of his. However, it seems that Qin Zhan must have some story. Qin Feng had a trace of doubt in his heart. Seeing Qin Feng lowering his head and pondering, Qin Yu thought that Qin Feng was shaken. He put on a hypocritical and cold smile and said, "Qin Feng, do you remember Aunt Lan?" "Aunt Lan?" Qin Feng's face slightly changed. The figure of a kind and loving woman appeared in his memory. This body lost its mother when it was young, so it grew up drinking the milk of a wet nurse. Although Qin Feng was not the wet nurse's biological son, their relationship was closer than that of a biological son. The corner of Qin Feng's eyes twitched. Although he was not the original Qin Feng, he inherited his memories and felt the same. A burst of ominous feeling welled up in his heart. Qin Feng lowered his eyes and endured the sudden irritation in his heart as he asked coldly, "What happened to her?" Chapter 30. Qin Yu's face revealed a faint smile and said, "Qin Feng, you're so smart. How could you not think of her ending?" Qin Feng slowly raised his head. His eyes flashed with a trace of sharp coldness. "You killed her?" Qin Yu sneered. "Not only that. Not only did she die, her entire family of 12, the men were all beheaded, and the women's ending was even worse. Her several daughters and daughters-in-law were all sent to Spring Rain House and were humiliated every day. This is all because of you. Anyone related to you has become the target of crazy revenge. They want you to live without a day of peace and die with grievances." He coldly shouted, "Now that you know how big of a disaster you've caused, do you still think that it's your luck that you got this opportunity? Hand it over, otherwise your disaster will never end." Qin Yu's words were very cruel. The message revealed was abnormally vicious, making one's hair stand on end. Aunt Lan's family did not betray the family. Just because they had a trace of relationship with Qin Feng, their family was ruined. The Qin clan was much more vicious and ruthless than he had imagined. Qin Feng was silent for a moment, suddenly raised his head and smiled strangely. "Just this." Qin Yu's heart sank. His heart was somewhat uneasy and asked, "Aren't you ashamed at all? These people were implicated by you, so they suffered such a disaster." Qin Feng faintly smiled and said, "Why should I feel guilty after I kill those bastards of Qin family, when I take revenge for them? If it's not enough, I'll raise those bastards' children in captivity as cattle and horses for generations to come. Men will be slaves, women will be prostitutes." The indifferent words fell into Qin Feng's heart. Qin Feng's heart sucked in a mouthful of cold air. The way he looked at Qin Feng completely changed. This person is crazy, completely crazy. Qin Yu felt extremely uneasy in his heart. Although he believed that Qin Feng was only boasting and that the strength of the Qin clan was not something that Qin Feng could shake, his heart was violently throbbing. It was as if there was a terrifying, ominous feeling in his heart. This ominous feeling caused him to be unable to restrain the killing intent in his heart any longer, and he shouted furiously, "Use the joint attack of the four spirits to kill this unrepentant little bastard. This Qin Feng must die. Leaving him alive would be a disaster." Qin Yu's face was ferocious. He waved the long blade in his hand. The blade light rose, a sharp blade shadow slashed out 4 times in a row, turning into 4 faint blade shadows, with the 5th blade slashing out. The 5 blade shadows converge into 1 blade and slashed out. The sharp blade light slashed out, and the whimpering cold light split the void. It was like a bolt of lightning across the sky, about to cut the earth in half. At the same time, the other 3 people also repeated the same action. Almost at the same time, the 4 of them pulled out their long sabers and slashed at the same time from 4 directions. The blade light was like a raging tide, expanding in Qin Feng's field of vision, expanding again and again, covering his whole body from all directions, leaving him with no place to hide. Qin Feng raised his head, his eyes flashed with a trace of sharp cold light. This blade gave him an enormous pressure. This pressure caused his whole body to reflexively become restless. His blood and qi instinctively vibrated, and these vibrations quickly harmonized into one, driving the whole body's internal organs, muscles, bones, blood, and qi, all of them in an incomparably neat, coordinated, and harmonized frequency to vibrate. In martial arts, there was a saying of using power in one place. In fact, it was using the blood and qi as the core, mobilizing the whole body's muscle power to exert power together. But this kind of state was not something that could be done under normal circumstances. Only at the moment of life and death, one's potential could burst out in a spurt, mobilizing the whole body's power to condense together. Qin Feng felt the pressure, but this pressure was still not strong enough. It seemed that he was still lacking a little bit, just a little bit more, and he would be able to reach this kind of state. Maybe this has something to do with my attainments in the Tao of Xian formations. Qin Feng judged. The spiritual 4 battle formation that seemed perfect in the eyes of the 4 was full of flaws in his eyes. He was a grandmaster in the Tao of Xian formations, and battle formations were martial arts secret techniques that used Xian formations as the foundation. In essence, they were still Xian formations. As long as it was a Xian formation, there was nothing that he did not understand. The spiritual 4 battle formation that the 4 of them unleashed at the same time seemed incomparably powerful and soul-stirring. But in his eyes, it was full of flaws. The spiritual 4 battle formation is unpredictable. The flow of qi is linked together, and it is like a single qi. The 4 sides fit together. It can combine the strength of the 4 people working together and unleash several times the strength. However, it is not difficult to break the spiritual 4 battle formation, as long as the 4 people's combined attack is interrupted and the connection of their qi is broken. The best way is to turn the 4-person battle formation into a 5-person battle formation and make them panic. All kinds of methods to break the formation flashed through Qin Feng's mind. A cold, murderous intent flashed in his eyes. The blood and qi in his body vibrated, and his body flashed. The phantom cool breeze movement technique turned into a phantom, shuttling through the formation. His speed was extremely fast, like a cool breeze. Shuttling through the dense bamboo forest, his footwork was calm. A miraculous thing happened. Just as the 4 blade lights were about to land on his body, he took a step out and stepped on a certain qi node. He was clearly enveloped by the blade lights, but in the next moment, an obscure qi suddenly appeared, and in an instant, the entire battle formation became obscure. The qi stagnated and became chaotic, causing the blade light that was about to land on his body to deviate a little. Bang! This deviated blade light landed in another place and instantly disrupted the trajectory of the other 3 long blades, causing the 4 people to kill each other. Pucci! Accompanied by a miserable scream, an arm flew out. A man dressed in martial arts attire covered his severed arm in pain. The blood on his hand dyed his clothes red. Qin Feng's face was ashen. His face was filled with disbelief. He had just chopped off his subordinate's arm. He clearly remembered that he had chopped at Qin Feng's, but... And then a strange pulling force appeared, and in a daze, the man with the blade moved a little, and as a result, his blade light cut off his opponent's arm. On the other side, Qin Feng's figure flashed like lightning, and like a leopard, he landed beside a black-faced man. In the other party's surprised expression, his claws were like the wind, grabbing the wrist that was holding the blade. His 5 fingers were like iron claws, grabbing the opponent's arm and smoothly stabbing the white-faced middle-aged man in martial arts attire in the abdomen. In the other party's disbelieving gaze, the blade light was raised, and he was cut in two. Blood burst out, illuminating the black-faced man's face as white as snow. In an instant, the Qin family's proud battle formation, the Four Spirits Demon subduing battle formation, was completely broken, causing 1 death and 1 disability. Qin Yu could hardly believe his eyes. A brat at the 3rd heavenly layer not only broke the law enforcement hall's secret battle formation in 1 blow, but also killed 2 of his subordinates at the 4th heavenly layer. It must be known that relying on the Four Spirits Demon subduing battle formation, the 4 of them could even fight a martial artist at the 6th heavenly layer for over 100 rounds. Could it be that Qin Feng was stronger than a martial artist at the 6th heavenly layer? Qin Yu's eyes were blood red, filled with anger, shock, and disbelief. Big brother Qin Yu. He seems to know the art of battle formations. On the side, the only uninjured black-faced man said with a deathly pale face. He was precisely the person who understood the language of birds and beasts. Just now, Qin Feng's steel-like palm grabbed his hand and borrowed his hand to directly kill a law enforcement hall disciple who was at the early stage of the 4th firmament of the martial path. Qin Feng knows the art of battle formations. Qin Yu's eyes flickered violently, and he looked with difficulty at Qin Feng, who had landed beside the black-faced man. His eyes were filled with disbelief. The art of battle formations was usually secretly passed down, and only Xian masters with extremely high attainments in Xian formations could be proficient in Xian formations. There was a Xian Master Hall on the Spirit Sea continent, and every major city had a Xian Master Hall. Every Xian master that was officially recognized by the Xian Master Hall was an expert with extremely high attainments in Xian formations. It was truly too difficult to become a Xian master if one did not have a nimble mind and an erudite talent in Xian formations. Every Xian master had a revered status. Even if it was a beginner Xian master, as long as he was officially recognized by the Xian Master Hall, countless large factions would immediately extend an olive branch. Qin Yu absolutely did not believe that Qin Feng was a Xian master, even if he was an intern Xian master. However, how could Qin Feng, a martial artist at the 3rd heavenly layer, break the Four Spirits Demon subduing battle formation? Even if some of the Qin family's elders with extremely high attainments in Xian formations came, they could only use brute force to break this battle formation. It was impossible for them to break it so easily. Qin Yu's entire body trembled. He did not dare to imagine that if Qin Feng was a Xian master, even if he was just an intern Xian master, the Qin family would be in great trouble. It seems that the status of Xian masters here is somewhat unimaginably high. Qin Feng looked at the several people's greatly changed expressions and was somewhat puzzled. It seemed that the information about him being proficient in Xian formations made them somewhat dumbfounded. In the next moment, his figure appeared behind Qin Yu, taking advantage of his weakness to take his life. His arms stretched out like an ape as he punched out with a black tortoise sea-suppressing fist. One of his hands exploded with a burst of cyan energy. In the desperate situation, Qin Yu was startled and instantly regained his senses. His heart and guts were torn apart. Qin Yu's face was sinister as he fiercely clenched his teeth and forcefully used his upper body to avoid most of the force. He had a secret heart-protecting mirror on his chest. He believed that with this heart-protecting mirror, he would at most be lightly injured. The corner of his mouth already revealed a smile. After dodging this attack, I will immediately blow the whistle on my neck to attract reinforcements. Once the disciplinary hall's experts arrive, we will capture this little bastard and definitely not let him off easily. Qin Yu's eyes emitted an ominous glint as he fiercely said in his heart, "Bang!" Qin Feng's fist was like a cannonball as it blasted out with a burst of terrifying cyan energy. The huge force in the air whimpered as it rubbed against the air. The fist was like steel rubbing against diamond. With a loud bang, it blasted apart the heart-protecting mirror on Qin Yu's back. The violent force directly shattered the heart-protecting mirror and directly pierced through his abdomen, bursting out a layer of blood. "You?" In severe pain, Qin Yu's eyes widened as he incredulously looked at the slender arm that pierced through his abdomen. He raised his head and looked at Qin Feng with a miserable expression, unable to say a word. "What? Great strength. So strange." He intermittently said a few words as he recalled the scene of Fong Tong and the others dying with their eyes wide open. His eyes flashed with a look of sudden realization. His eyes were dripping blood with hatred. "I hate it. I was too careless. If I had found you, I would have immediately called the disciplinary hall's experts. Otherwise, the one who would have died would have been you." In the final radiance of the setting sun, Qin Yu stared at Qin Feng and said hatefully. His face was full of unwillingness and regret. "If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for being too greedy." Poochie Qin Feng coldly snorted as he pulled out an arm from Qin Yu's abdomen. With a huge shock, Qin Yu's head tilted as he fell to the ground with a loud bang. Feeling the surging qi and blood in his body, Qin Feng slightly closed his eyes. After a moment, he opened his eyes and said regretfully, "My potential has not been fully displayed. I still need a little bit more to be able to comprehend qi." Chapter 31. For martial artists at the 4th heavenly stage had surrounded and killed a martial artist at the 3rd heavenly stage. Not only had they not been able to injure him, but they had instead been killed by him. If this matter were spread out, Qin Shou would definitely slap that person. This was simply a fantasy, a daydream. But now, Qin Shou had no choice but to believe it. At the foot of the mountain wind rustled. In this mountain valley, the smell of blood had yet to dissipate. Of the 4 disciplinary hall elites, besides him, the others had already lost their breath. Qin Feng's figure was like a cheetah, turning into a phantom. He punched out, and a tremendous force slammed into the chest of the man who had lost an arm. In the man's unwilling and angry eyes, Qin Feng's punch directly broke his heart. With a bang, the tremendous force threw the one-armed man dozens of feet away. Blood sprayed out as he tumbled into the bushes. After killing the one-armed man, Qin Feng glanced at the black-faced man who was the only one still standing. In the black-faced man's shock, fear, bitterness, unease, and vigilance, Qin Feng only glanced at him. However, this glance made the black-faced man, Qin Shou, feel as if he was being stared at by some terrifying primordial beast. All the hairs on his body stood on end, and his scalp exploded. With his innate supernatural ability to communicate with birds and beasts, Qin Shou's senses were much more sensitive than others. He could feel the indescribable fear that came from the depths of his bloodline. Qin Shou's muscles stiffened. He stood where he was, not daring to move at all. He didn't even dare to wave the saber in his hand that was more important than his wife. His eyes were filled with fear as he watched Qin Feng leisurely search through the 3 corpses on the ground. He watched as Qin Feng took out banknotes, medicinal pills, and an extremely precious secret manual. He could see that Qin Feng was extremely skilled in this sort of searching technique. With a single glance, one could tell that he was someone who often did this sort of thing. He was already skilled in killing people. Qin Shou's complexion became paler and paler. Anyone who knew that after they died, their belongings would be plundered so thoroughly would feel a chill in their hearts. Qin Shou couldn't help but think that if he were killed, would he also be plundered like this? Most martial artists had a bad habit. That was self-confidence. They liked to keep their valuables on their bodies and not at home. He was no exception. Qin Shou gritted his teeth and swore fiercely in his heart that if he was able to return alive this time, he would absolutely not hide all his possessions on him. Qin Feng glanced at the elixir in his hand in surprise. This time, he actually obtained a bottle of extremely precious essence-quenching elixir. But when he thought of Qin Yu's identity, he instantly felt at ease. This Qin Yu's identity was noble. He was the son of the Law Enforcement Hall's elder, and he was also an elite of the Law Enforcement Hall. coupled with the fact that he had embezzled all the property of his father, Qin Zhan, it wasn't strange for him to possess such a good item. There's also a low-level spiritual martial realm blade technique called Cold Moon Chop. The other three also contributed a few pills, most of which were low-grade. Qin Feng didn't think much of them and casually threw them away. Qin Shou's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. As the elite disciples of a law enforcement hall, their monthly salary was only a bottle of low-grade essence-quenching pills. Usually, they treasured it very much and were reluctant to consume it. However, Qin Feng threw it away after just a glance. He was simply a prodigal son. A prodigal son. Qin Shou's eyes turned red. He secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. If it wasn't for Qin Feng's fierceness, he would have immediately rushed up, picked up all the elixirs, and kicked them into his arms. You want them? Suddenly, a cold voice appeared next to his ear. Qin Shou was startled. He raised his head, and his face couldn't help but turn pale. Am I that scary? Qin Feng slowly walked over with a faint smile on his face. Seeing that he seemed to have scared the black-faced man, Qin Feng only laughed and said in a tempting tone, You seem to want these elixirs. Do you want them? If you want them, they're all yours. Qin Shou's eyes brightened. His throat made a sound, and he almost instinctively swallowed a mouthful of saliva. This temptation was too great. There were 4 or 5 bottles of elixirs scattered on the ground. If this was a normal situation, it would be equivalent to half a year of his salary. This temptation was too great. The premise is that you follow me. Qin Feng's next sentence made him stop in his tracks. His face was pale, and the weight under his feet was as heavy as 1,000 pounds. Following Qin Feng, wasn't that the same as courting death? The disciplinary hall had put in all their efforts to capture your young master. Following you was the same as courting death. Qin Feng saw the black-faced man's hesitant and unwilling expression and said without batting an eyelid, Don't worry, Qin Feng, have never forced anyone. I have always advocated using virtue to win people over. If you are not willing, I have another choice. What choice? Qin Shou's eyes brightened, and his face was filled with joy. As long as he didn't have to follow this terrifying guy, he was willing to do anything. That is, I will kill you and plunder you. Qin Feng laughed coldly. His laughter was filled with evil intentions. Qin Shou's face turned pale. This was still King winning people over with virtue. Did he still have a choice? Qin Shou's expression changed. After a while, he put down the long saber in his hand and knelt on the ground, begging in a low voice. Ninth young master, please let me go. I have parents and children to take care of. Following you will only lead to death. I beg you, please let my family live. It is impossible to let you go. Qin Feng ignored the black-faced man's pleas. He played with a secret manual that he had just plundered and said indifferently, You have the ability to communicate with birds and beasts. Letting you go is like letting a tiger back into the mountains. With you around, it will be difficult for my whereabouts to not be exposed. On the other hand, with you around, it will be even more difficult for the Qin family to find me. Do you think I will let you go? Qin Shou's face turned pale, and he was speechless for a while. Qin Feng continued. Actually, following me is also a good way out. You saw the pills just now? I can tell you that I have as many of these pills as I want. If you follow me, you will have an endless supply of pills. There are also secret manuals. Qin Feng casually threw the low-level spirit level Cold Moon / secret manual in front of Qin Shou. Qin Shou could not move his eyes away from it. A martial technique of the spirit martial realm could be regarded as a family treasure. Qin Shou could ignore the pills because he knew that his talent was limited. He would not be able to achieve anything in this lifetime. However, he could not ignore this spirit-level martial skill. This martial skill was not like pills. It could be passed down from generation to generation. Even if he could not use it, he could pass it down to his son, grandson, and so on. This temptation was too great. Qin Feng could see that Qin Shou was already tempted. However, he still had some scruples in his heart. He was probably afraid of the Qin family's ruthless methods and did not dare to betray them. Qin Feng coldly laughed. As for the Qin family, you don't have to be afraid. I will let them think that you're already dead. You only need to hide behind the scenes. You don't need to show your face in public. Qin Shou was completely tempted. As long as he did not go against the Qin family and implicate his family, joining Qin Feng was not unacceptable. Moreover, there were so many benefits in front of him. No matter if it was the pills or the secret manuals, they were all things that could not be bought with money. Of course, the most important thing was that Qin Feng was staring at him with cold eyes. If he dared to say no, he would chop him alive. I am willing. Qin Shou hesitated for a moment, but still wisely chose to agree. I will temporarily agree with him and stabilize him. When I have the chance, I will find a chance to leave this evil star. When I go back, I can still be an elite of the law enforcement hall. Carefree. Qin Shou agreed with his mouth, but his heart was optimistic. However, an hour later, Qin Shou could no longer be optimistic. Looking at the two Qin clan disciples who were tied up by Qin Feng and walking over with fire in their eyes, his legs turned cold. Qin Shou, to prove your loyalty, pick up your sword and kill the two of them. Chapter 32. In the southwest, about half a kilometer away, someone knocked over a gray dove's nest on a tree. A male and female gray dove are cursing in the sky. In the northwest, about 100 feet away, two people are searching in this direction. They stole the prey of a mountain wolf. The mountain wolf is telling its mate that these two people are terrifying. In the southeast, a search team with more than 10 people is approaching. On the rock, the black-faced man had a crying face. He licked his dry lips and chattered on without end, reporting in a methodical manner. The handsome young man had shoulder-length black hair, sharp eyebrows, and starry eyes. He lazily basked in the sunlight and nodded from time to time. The most terrifying thing was that there were more than 10 corpses lying around him. Each of the corpses exuded a powerful aura. It was clear that these corpses were not weak when they were alive. The black-faced man secretly glanced at the pile of corpses at his feet. He was frightened. These people were the backbone of the Qin family when they were alive. They were the elites of the law enforcement hall and were martial artists at the 4th level of the martial path. They showed off their strength in the Qin family. No matter where they went, they were envied by other disciples. Even some of the young masters of the Qin family would be afraid of them. But now they were all dead. It could be said that they had indirectly died by his hands. He had become Qin Feng's biggest accomplice. He had become the executioner of the Qin family's elites. But he didn't dare to complain. He didn't dare to complain because he had no way out. Besides following Qin Feng to the end, there was no other way. Qin Shou frowned bitterly as he muttered. He didn't know what to feel. He had never thought that he would raise his butcher's knife against his family. Qin Feng ignored the black-faced man's dry expression. His eyes were like a wolf's as he scanned the surroundings. He looked through the valley and into the forest, searching for the next enemy. With Qin Feng's ability to communicate with birds and beasts, Qin Feng was like a tiger that had grown wings. It was like he had an extra pair of eyes in the sky. Not even the slightest movement in the forest could escape his eyes. From Qin Shou's scattered bits and pieces of information, he could always summarize the most useful information. With Qin Shou's predictions, he had already escaped the pursuit of the elites of the law enforcement hall many times. He had even killed the elites of the law enforcement hall. After reading out the information, Qin Shou hesitated for a moment before forcing a smile. Young master, can we not do it? We have killed enough people. After all, the same blood flows in our bodies. No, Qin Feng didn't wait for him to finish and said decisively. He turned around and walked up to Qin Shou. He stared coldly at the dark-faced, middle-aged man and sneered. What's wrong? Your heart has softened. Why didn't you show any mercy when you were chasing after me? This. Qin Shou's black face instantly turned red. Do you still remember how they treated Aunt Lan? Cruel revenge. Qin Feng's tone was cold. Do you really think that I, Qin Feng, am still the same piece of trash that you used to be? Do you think that I, Qin Feng, am still the same trash that you used to be? I am not like the chickens, ducks, cows, and sheep that they reared to fatten up and slaughter. They think that they can control my fate, that they can look down on me and see me as a piece of meat. I will kill their guts until one day I will completely step on their faces and use their faces to wipe my shoes. Qin Feng laughed coldly. His laughter was incomparably cold. Qin Shou felt a terrifying chill rise from the bottom of his heart, and his entire body trembled. Qin Shou couldn't help but feel a wave of sorrow. Hadn't the Qin clan bled enough these days? The number of elite disciples that died was no less than 300. The Qin clan's vitality had been greatly damaged. Qin Feng looked coldly at the dark-faced man and reprimanded him coldly. You'd better put away your meaningless sympathy. If I hear you say such things again, I'll kill you myself. Yes. Qin Shou stood on the spot with his head lowered. He didn't dare to look at the pair of eyes that were as black as ink. At this moment, Qin Feng was like a treacherous and sinister sword in his eyes. If he wasn't careful, this sword could really cut his neck. After a long silence, Qin Feng looked at Qin Shou, who had his head lowered and didn't speak, and suddenly asked, "Tell me about Xian Masters. Previously, I saw that you all looked as if you had seen a ghost after knowing that this young master knew about Xian formations. Could it be that you know about Xian formations?" Hearing this, Qin Shou was shocked. He looked at Qin Feng with an astonished expression and said, "Young master really knows about Xian formations?" Qin Feng nodded with a calm expression. However, Qin Shou was so excited that he was trembling. His expression changed drastically. He looked at Qin Feng as if he was looking at a golden bachelor. That strange expression made Qin Feng's eyebrows twitch violently. "Isn't it just knowing about Xian formations? Why are you so excited?" Qin Feng asked in confusion. Qin Shou was choked by Qin Feng's words and rolled his eyes. He suppressed his excitement and said, "Young master, you probably haven't left our Shangha town. Outside of Shangha town, Xian masters who know about Xian formations and alchemists who are experts in alchemy are the two most popular professions. People who know about Xian formations and alchemy are as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. No matter where they go, they are revered." Qin Shou's heart trembled with excitement. His previous dejection was swept away. He didn't expect that this ruthless and evil master was actually a Xian master. Following a Xian master. Just thinking about it made Qin Shou's legs go weak. I know about the revered alchemists. People who practice martial arts have great desires for external items. Not only can a pill break through a realm, it can even save a life at a critical moment and reverse the outcome of a battle. However, why do Xian masters have such status? Qin Feng asked strangely. Qin Shou was right. Qin Feng had never left Shangha town, so his knowledge was very limited. Qin Shou's mind shook, and he hurriedly explained everything he knew about Xian masters. Following Qin Shou's explanation, Qin Feng came to a realization. In the age of decline, vitality was exhausted and techniques like Xian formations, which used vitality as the foundation, were naturally not very useful. However, right now was the beginning of the Golden Era. Vitality was endlessly flowing in, and it was getting denser with each passing day. The path of Xian formations naturally flourished along with it. Especially with the flourishing of battle formations, Xian masters had a pivotal position in the Spirit Sea continent. Every official Xian master would go to the Xian Master Hall for certification and appraisal. According to Qin Shou, Xian masters are divided into low to high levels. They are divided into intern Xian masters, official Xian masters, and official Xian masters are further divided into first-grade Xian masters, second-grade Xian masters, ninth-grade Xian masters. According to the Xian Master Hall's explanation of Xian masters levels, those who could set up 9 or more basic Xian formations were intern Xian masters. Those who could completely engrave and meditate a first-grade Xian formation were first-grade Xian masters. Those who could completely engrave and meditate a second-grade Xian formation were second-grade Xian masters. Those who could completely engrave and meditate a third-grade Xian formation were third-grade Xian masters. Usually, high-level Xian formation diagrams were very precious and had unimaginable Taoist rhymes. Official Xian masters were very rare. As for what abilities official Xian masters had, Qin Shou's knowledge was limited, so he could not give a clear explanation. Qin Feng stroked his smooth and beardless chin with a strange expression. There were countless Xian formations in his mind, including high-level Xian formation diagrams and several sets of legendary sky-level Xian formation diagrams that could trap and kill gods and demons. As for setting them up through meditation, that was not a problem at all. However, the higher the level of a Xian formation, the more troublesome it was to set it up. It was also affected by spiritual materials and terrain, so it could not be set up casually. Qin Feng was very curious. According to the Xian Master Hall's rules, what level of Xian Master was he? Chapter 33. After teaching this new subordinate a little and completely crushing his will to resist, Qin Feng set his sights on the depths of the barbaric mountain range. At this moment, the black-faced man suddenly exclaimed in surprise. "Ninth young master, the clan has retreated and given up on the search. Have the people in the outer perimeter of the barbaric mountain range completely retreated? Are you sure?" Qin Feng raised his eyebrows and was greatly surprised. Could it be that the Qin clan had compromised this time? Then he thought about it again. Perhaps there was another conspiracy against him. "I'm sure. Most of the birds in the forest have started to return to their nests. The search teams in the forest are shrinking and have gradually retreated. They left in a hurry. It seems that they have encountered something," the black-faced man reported. He couldn't hide the joy on his tanned face. "Heavens, I finally don't have to follow this executioner to kill the clan's elites. God bless me." Qin Feng glanced at the black-faced man's slightly joyful expression and snorted coldly. The black-faced man was so frightened that he quickly restrained a smile on his face. He snorted coldly and looked in the direction of Upper River Town. I don't believe that the Qin clan would give up so easily. They have paid such a huge price. There's no way they would die without a cause. They left in such a hurry. Something must have happened to the Qin clan. Let's go take a look." Roar. Abruptly, a ferocious roar of a tiger drifted over from the peak of the mountain. Qin Feng, who was about to move, instantly halted. He stared in bewilderment at the depths of the desolation mountain range. From afar, that tyrannical roar of a tiger was faintly emitting a terrifying might. Amidst the tiger's roar, the entire forest shook. Groups of beasts fled in panic. The birds were restless, and the sound of flapping wings filled the air. Under Qin Feng and Qin Shou's solemn expressions, a small group of beasts suddenly appeared in the outer perimeter of the barbaric mountain range. The deafening roar resounded through the entire forest like a dam bursting. Rumble, rumble. The earth was trembling. Qin Feng stood on the rock and looked into the distance. A cloud of smoke and dust that stretched for several kilometers soared into the sky from the distance. At first, the sound was not loud, but later on, it was like thunder rolling. The pervasive smoke and dust rushed straight to the place where the two people were standing. The two of them turned around and looked into the depths of the forest in the barbaric mountain range. Under their astonished gazes, countless white deers, wild cows, goats, wild wolves, apes, and even giant elephants appeared in their field of vision. Countless trees were being trampled by the panic-stricken guardian beasts. Mountain aardwolves the size of calves were the most fearsome predators in the mountains. Each aardwolf was comparable to a warrior in the second sky of the martial path. There was also the earth rhinoceros that was like a small hill. Its khaki-colored scales glowed with a pale yellow luster under the sun. Its four limbs were strong, and when it ran, it seemed as if it was trampling on the earth. This earth rhinoceros was incomparably strong. Its sharp black rhinoceros horn could easily pierce through refined iron. Even a martial artist at the third heavenly layer would have to flee upon seeing it. However, this kind of ferocious beast was fleeing in fear. Its huge eyes revealed a sense of panic. Squeak, squeak. Steel-armed ape monkeys that were as tall as 2 people and had green hair that resembled steel needles leaped over the heads of the giant elephants. These monkeys were the elves of the forest. They moved as fast as lightning. In terms of agility, few pharaohs could surpass them. There was also the iron bison that had copper skin and iron bones. There was also the tusked boar, with 2 snow-white sharp fangs and thorns protruding from its back. The pharaohs that used to roam the forest were now panic-stricken. They scrambled to escape into the outer forest of the barbaric mountain range. It was as if there was something terrifying chasing after them in the depths of the barbaric mountain range. These fearsome predators did not even care about the things in front of them. They were running for their lives. It seems like a big guy has appeared. Qin Feng was not unfamiliar with this kind of feral tide. Every time a feral king appeared, it might cause the ferals in the surrounding territories to riot and cause a feral tide. Of course, there was also a special situation. It was when an intelligent feral beast was purposely driving the other ferals from behind, causing a large-scale riot. The appearance of such a feral tide often indicated the birth of a terrible disaster on the continent. The feral tide was attacking the city. Roar! As the beast tide rushed past, a shocking tiger's roar resounded through the forest again after a short while. Under the shocked gazes of the two, a giant snow-white tiger walked out from the depths of the forest. It was a giant snow-white tiger. Its body was huge and looked to be at least twice the size of a normal giant tiger. There was not a single strand of mixed hair on its body. Its fur was soft and white like snow, sparkling with a faint white light. It was like a supreme being that had walked out of the ancient forest. What was strange was that this giant tiger gave off a very elegant feeling as it walked out of the forest. Walking in the forest was like walking in one's own backyard. Although it did not attack, its calm posture and heavy steps were like stepping on one's heart, causing one's heart to tremble. The giant tiger's eyes looked at them with a faint majesty, coldness, and ruthlessness. Thousands of soldiers and horses were not as scary as it. This was the gaze of the top predator. This is the giant cloud ridge tiger. Qin Feng did not say anything. However, Qin Shou behind him could not help but gasp when he saw the giant tiger. He even began to stutter. Qin Shou was scared out of his wits. It was not that he was timid, but that this giant snow-white tiger had a very powerful background. The giant cloud ridge tiger was a mutated feral beast with a trace of ancient bloodline. It was one of the top predators among the ferals. Even a martial artist of the sixth firmament of the martial path would have to avoid it. It's over, it's over. We're too unlucky. Why do we meet such a terrifying feral king like the giant cloud ridge tiger? Qin Shou's legs began to tremble. His face was pale, and his eyes were filled with despair. Qin Shou raised his head and looked at Qin Feng. He did not know what expression this shrewd and ferocious young man would have at this moment. He guessed that if he met the giant cloud ridge tiger, he would probably close his eyes and wait for death. That's right. The giant cloud ridge tiger was an ancient feral beast with a trace of the ancient Light King's bloodline. Even a martial artist of the fifth firmament of the martial path would have to avoid it. Qin Shou raised his head and took a look. However, what he saw almost made his jaw drop to the ground. He rubbed his eyes, almost unable to believe what he saw. What did he see? When the terrifying young man saw the giant tiger, not only did he not show a trace of fear, he even looked extremely excited. He rubbed his palms together, as if he was about to go all out. It was as if encountering a feral beast like the giant cloud ridge tiger was as excited as seeing 100,000 taels of gold. He was not even this excited when he plundered the treasures of his captain. Qin Yu. Was he crazy? Was he scared out of his wits by the giant cloud ridge tiger? Qin Feng was indeed very happy. This was because he saw the dawn of breaking through to the fourth firmament of the martial path from this ancient feral cloud ridge tiger. Chapter 34. The vital energy and blood in Qin Feng's entire body were vibrating, and crackling sounds resounded from between his tendons and bones. His entire body was like a taut bowstring, and his eyes were filled with fighting spirit, like a ferocious beast that was accumulating power and waiting to attack. Qin Feng was very excited. Although the appearance of the Yunling giant tiger caused him to fall into a huge crisis, it was also a rare opportunity. Qin Feng saw the light of breaking through to the fourth heaven of the martial path from this Yunling giant tiger. Black tortoise yin-yang technique. Black tortoise suppresses the sea. Qin Feng's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he strode towards the snow-white giant tiger that was twice the size of an ordinary tiger. Black tortoise yin-yang technique was ready to strike. Bang, bang, bang. With every step, the ground shook as if there was a huge creature stomping on the ground. The gravel on the ground jumped, and the trees shook. Roar! The Yunling giant tiger seemed to have felt the soaring fighting spirit from Qin Feng. It leaped over the bushes and landed on a tall rock. Its eyes were bright, and it suddenly let out an earth-shattering roar as if it was responding to Qin Feng's fighting spirit. Great! Qin Feng was not surprised, but happy. He clenched his fist, and his fighting spirit was boiling. He let out a long roar that turned into rolling thunder and punched towards the Yunling giant tiger like a phantom. Bang, bang, bang. Black tortoise yin-yang technique punched out, and a huge force shook the air. The huge force was like two pieces of fine iron rubbing against each other at an extreme speed and instantly reached the Yunling giant tiger's head. Although the Yunling giant tiger's body was huge, its forelegs were abnormally agile. A trace of surprise flashed across its eyes. Obviously, it did not expect the little thing in front of it to have such an imposing manner. However, it was very intelligent. It twisted its body and took a step forward. Its foreclaws were like snow-white lightning as it lightly pounced and dodged Qin Feng's attack. Huff huff. Qin Feng's first move had completely aroused the giant cloud ridge tiger's fighting spirit. The giant cloud ridge tiger let out a deep roar. Its snow-white body pounced, and its tail swept out like a long whip. Compared to its body that was even larger than an ordinary huge tiger, this tail seemed to be somewhat short and small. However, its strength was not to be underestimated in the slightest. To Qin Feng, this tail that suddenly swept over was like a poisonous snake whip. Its imposing manner was astonishing, and it was as fast as lightning. Everywhere it passed, it caused explosive sounds like wind and thunder. Qin Feng didn't dare to take it head-on. While he was in the air, he did a somersault like a hawk and lowered his body just in time to avoid the sweep of the tail. After dodging the thunderous attack of the tail, Qin Feng prepared to rush forward again. However, the giant cloud ridge tiger beat him to it. This giant tiger let out a violent roar and pounced forward like a bolt of lightning. Its speed was faster than lightning, its body was snow-white, and it was incomparably majestic. Its sharp claws flashed with a cold light, scarier than any divine weapon that could cut through iron like mud. Qin Feng was caught off guard. He could only glare and let out a loud roar. He mobilized all the blood and qi in his body and raised both his hands to punch out. At this critical moment of life and death, Qin Feng's muscles were squeezed out with all his might. They trembled, forming an invisible vibration that spread to every part of his body in the blink of an eye. These vibrations quickly coordinated and combined, driving all the organs, bones, blood, and qi in his body, and the force of the black tortoise, to vibrate at an incomparably uniform and coordinated frequency. It seemed that under the pressure of this life and death crisis, the potential in his body suddenly erupted, accumulating into a point and gathering on his arm. Block for me. Qin Feng's eyes were crimson red. The roar from his mouth was like the roar of an ancient black tortoise, blasting out countless space, like the roar of a thunderous lion. Black tortoise Tao of yin-yang, black tortoise suppressing the sea. In just an instant, Qin Feng gathered all his blood and qi in his arms, compressed them between his palms, and blasted out a punch. Facing the giant cloud ridge tiger, he collided with it. Bang, bang. A gust of wind blew from the top of his head. The giant cloud ridge tiger swiped with its claws. Qin Feng's arms sank as if they were holding up a mountain. The huge force collided, and he turned into a spinning top and was sent flying. CSI. When he landed, Qin Feng's feet rubbed against the ground, and he was forced back dozens of steps before coming to a stop. Qin Feng's eyes were crimson red. He raised his arms and looked at them. At this moment, they were a bloody mess. Even the slightest movement would cause excruciating pain. His feet moved, and a sharp pain came from his chest. There was a sweet taste in his throat, and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. CSI, what a terrifying strength. Qin Feng sucked in a breath of cold air. This giant cloud ridge tiger was worthy of being an ancient species. Its strength was shocking, and even his black tortoise's strength couldn't withstand it. In just one round, he was injured quite badly. Little did he know that while Qin Feng was still in shock, there was another person in the distance whose jaw had dropped to the ground. Too ferocious, this lunatic. He actually fought with an ancient species like the giant cloud ridge tiger. Qin Shou was so scared that his face was drained of color. He didn't know what to say. He had seen crazy people before, but he had never seen such a crazy person. He actually fought with an ancient species with his bare hands. This was simply inhumane. One had to know that even a sixth heavenly layer of the martial path wouldn't be so reckless when facing an ancient species like the giant cloud ridge tiger. Although he was badly injured, Qin Feng didn't panic. He forcefully formed a seal with both his hands, and at this moment, the black tortoise divine pellet that had been sealed in his dantian suddenly shook. The great void spirit seizing technique was unsealed, and the divine pellet in his dantian emitted a warm and refreshing medicinal effect. Strands of medicinal power flowed into his injured meridians. Flesh began to grow on his mangled arms at a speed visible to the naked eye. His shaken internal organs were instantly healed under the nourishment of the medicinal power. In fact, they were even slightly tempered, and his strength increased slightly. Under Qin Shou's astonished gaze, Qin Feng, who looked like he was seriously injured a moment ago, suddenly became energetic again. There's a nanny, don't be afraid. Again, Qin Feng raised his iron fist and charged towards the giant cloud ridge tiger once again. His aura was like a rainbow, and he was full of vigor. Soon, with a loud bang, Qin Feng was sent flying like a cannonball. When he landed, Qin Shou could hear the sound of Qin Feng's bones cracking. With an unknown number of broken ribs, Qin Feng crawled up from the ground with difficulty. This time, even breathing was somewhat difficult for Qin Feng. However, in the next moment, the black tortoise divine pellet in his body once again played its role. That round and glossy divine pellet produced from his dantian once again spat out a wisp of medicinal power. Under the effect of the black tortoise divine pellet's medicinal power, that terrifying injury almost instantly healed. His blood and qi surged like raging waves, each wave higher than the previous. His blood and qi surged majestically, and his entire body was like a scorched prawn. Qin Feng's eyes were glowing red. He felt that if he chose to condense his aura now, he had more than a 50% chance of success. However, this wasn't enough. Qin Feng's eyes were red as he turned into a streak of red lightning and charged towards the giant cloud ridge tiger once again. Pung! This time, Qin Feng's injuries were even more severe. He panted heavily and looked down at his wounds. His abdomen was torn open by the tiger's claw, and even his internal organs were exposed. This time, the black tortoise divine pellet came into play again. A strand of medicinal effect seeped into his body, and a strand of light wrapped around the wound, causing it to heal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Under the effect of the medicinal effect, his blood and qi surged, almost bursting out of his skin, forming a blood fog. If he immediately used the secret art to condense his aura, Qin Feng had a 60% chance of success. This was already a very high probability, but he didn't do it immediately. Qin Feng's eyes revealed a trace of excitement. Although he was still defeated this time, it wasn't that he didn't improve. At least, he had reached the side of the giant cloud ridge tiger. He lasted for a few more breaths of time. there is still room for improvement. He hadn't reached his limit yet. Again, Qin Feng's battle intent soared to the heavens. His body shot forward like an arrow and punched out. The surging power was even more majestic than before. Sent flying, injured, circulated the medicinal effect of the black tortoise divine pellet to recover, and then charged forward again. 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, in half a day's time, Qin Feng was risking his life. He had lost count of how many times Qin Feng's ribs were broken, how many times his internal organs were injured, and how many times he almost lost his life under the claws of the giant Cloud Ridge tiger. However, he knew that he was getting stronger and stronger. At the beginning, he was heavily injured in the first exchange, but now he had exchanged more than 10 moves with the giant Cloud Ridge tiger. He had become much stronger. The blood and qi in his body were like flames, and his face was burning hot. The medicinal effect in his body surged, causing his veins to bulge, as if they were about to explode. He urgently needed to vent. A fiery aura was changing in his meridians, and he felt that he was about to break through. Bang! Qin Feng raised his iron fist, and his body pounced forward like a dragon. He leaned to the side and punched out. A powerful force surged, and amidst an earth-shattering roar, he actually blocked the claw of the giant Cloud Ridge tiger. The two of them were like 2 wrestlers, wrestling with each other. Chapter 35. Bang, bang, bang. As his strength reached its limit, Qin Feng took a deep breath and seemed to have broken through a certain limit. Traces of warm air appeared in his meridians. Along with Qin Feng's breathing, this thread of qi was like a little mouse scurrying around in his meridians. It was very warm. Level 4 of the martial path. He had broken through. In an instant, the feeling of his body expanding to its limit disappeared. It was as if all the expanding strength had been condensed into this small trace of air. This tiny bit of aura seemed to be another source of fresh energy. This caused Qin Feng's spirit to be greatly roused. He gathered this trace of strength and transformed it into a punch. Qin Feng blasted out with his fist, causing a huge surge of energy to surge forth like a violent storm. Bang, bang, bang. The huge force seemed to have broken through an air barrier, and an invisible hole appeared in the air. The Yunling giant tiger had no time to dodge. It was intelligent, and its bones were like flexible snakes. When Qin Feng punched its fur, a part of its snow-white fur caved in and removed part of the fist force. Qin Feng seemed to have punched cotton and had no place to exert force. But this time, the Yunling giant tiger had miscalculated. Qin Feng's punch carried a trace of newly condensed inner breath. At level 4 of the martial path, one could condense a trace of bone-eroding hidden force. His punch was like a needle hidden in cotton. This trace of hidden force went through its fur and directly into its internal organs. It was like a dagger piercing into its body. Roar! The Yunling giant tiger was in great pain and could not help but roar. That trace of hidden energy was stirring inside its body, causing its muscles and bones to feel weak and powerless. For the first time, the Yunling giant tiger was at a disadvantage because of Qin Feng. The Yunling giant tiger was intelligent. After being at a disadvantage, it glared at Qin Feng and turned around. This snow-white giant tiger decisively chose to run away. The snow-white tiger moved faster and faster. Qin Feng didn't expect that the tiger would run away. In a moment of carelessness, he let the tiger run away. He actually ran away. Qin Feng was stunned, and then a look of regret appeared in his eyes. It's a pity that this giant tiger runs pretty fast. Otherwise, the tiger penis of the giant Cloud Ridge tiger is extraordinarily effective. Qin Feng smacked his lips as he stared in the direction that the giant white tiger had escaped with a look of regret. Ever since he lost to that woman in bed, Qin Feng had been very dissatisfied with a certain aspect of himself. The thought of a huge, snow-white tiger with the bloodline of an ancient remnant beast running away and losing the tiger's penis immediately pained him. Hearing Qin Feng's words, Qin Shou's black face twisted, and there was a trace of disbelief and absurdity in his eyes. Not only was a martial artist at the third heavenly layer of the martial path able to fight against an ancient species like the giant cloud ridge tiger, the most unbelievable thing was that he actually won. Qin Feng didn't care about Qin Shou's stupor. Seeing that the giant cloud ridge tiger had escaped, he suppressed the regret in his heart and closed his eyes to breathe. Once again, a trace of warm qi was produced in his body. At this moment, he had already stepped into the fourth heavenly layer of the martial path and condensed his first trace of inner breath. Next, he only needed to open up some blocked meridians and circulate his inner breath in his body for a small cycle. Then, he would be able to enter the fifth heavenly layer of the martial path. After reaching the fourth heavenly layer of the martial path, he could choose a technique to condense his inner breath. For example, the most famous technique of the Qin family, the Nine-Wind Roar. The Nine-Wind Roar was a wind attribute technique of the spiritual martial path. After practicing this technique, one's inner breath would naturally have a trace of the lightness of the wind attribute. It would have a slight advantage in comprehending the wind attribute seed. However, from Qin Feng's point of view, it was very dangerous to blindly practice a technique. For example, if one's body leaned towards the fire attribute and practiced a water attribute technique, they would never have the chance to comprehend the attribute seed and enter the meridian stage. Only by testing one's own attribute could one decide which attribute technique to practice. If one had a water attribute body, practicing a water attribute technique or an ice attribute technique would naturally be like a tiger that had grown wings. If one went to practice a fire attribute technique, it would be destroying one's future. The Qin family had a Xian formation that specialized in testing a martial artist's body attribute. Every martial artist who broke through the fourth heavenly layer of a martial path could use this formation to test their own attribute. However, at this moment, Qin Feng and the Qin family's hatred was as great as the sky. Naturally, he could not use the Qin family's Xian formation to test his own attribute. However, this did not mean that he had no other way. This was because he could temporarily practice a non-attribute technique. A non-attribute technique was suitable for martial artists of any attribute. Coincidentally, Qin Feng knew of an extremely high-quality non-attribute technique. This technique allowed one's inner breath to be neutral and calm. Although it did not have any special characteristics, it had the advantage of a continuous flow of meridians. There was no need to worry about conflicting attributes and the risk of qi deviation. The most important thing was that after practicing this technique, if one's own attribute was tested, one could completely change to another technique. There is a risk of conflict between meridians. This technique was called the Xiantian Primordial Origin One-Breath Scripture. During the Age of Chaos, this technique had been popularized and became the first choice of many martial artists who broke through the fourth heavenly layer of the martial path. Qin Feng stayed in the bear cave for a day. After the trace of inner breath in his meridians had stabilized and completely transformed into the Primordial Origin One Breath, he brought Qin Shou down the mountain and headed towards the Qin family in Upper River Town. Qin Feng and Qin Shou passed through the Boorish wasteland and headed towards Upper River Town, where the Qin family's base was located. In the evening, the sunset glow was like fire, and the setting sun was like blood. The lively forest during the day slowly darkened. Seeing that they only needed to cross another mountain range to enter Upper River Town, Qin Feng and Qin Shou stopped when they passed by a colonel. Both of them had strange expressions on their faces because there was a man and a woman in front of them having a private meeting. The man was tall and wore a green robe. He had a scholarly temperament and a handsome face. He was extraordinarily refined and had a good temperament. The woman was tall and had a graceful figure with a slender waist. She wore a pink dress that accentuated her extraordinary temperament. Her jet black hair was like clouds and fluttered in the mountain wind. She looked like a fairy who had turned into a human, beautiful and generous. The two of them held hands as if they were watching the sunset side by side. It was a very warm scene, like a pair of immortal couples. The only thing that was not harmonious was the two people who suddenly ran out. The moment the two of them approached, the two of them also noticed the two people who were running towards them from afar. "It's you, Trash." That beautiful girl in pink turned her head, and when she saw the two of them, her gaze landed on Qin Feng as a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. From her tone, it seemed that she was acquainted with Qin Feng. Upon seeing Qin Feng's appearance, her beautiful brows instantly turned cold as a trace of unmasked disgust and contempt could be seen in her eyes. Qin Feng also recognized the identity of this woman. Jay looked at the two of them in surprise. He did not expect to meet an old acquaintance in this remote ravine. Hearing the girl's rude words, Qin Feng raised his chin and said indifferently, "Yu Yao, if I'm Trash, then what are you? An adulterous couple." The girl's face turned ashen. Without waiting for the other party to refute, Qin Feng sneered and ridiculed. "It's said that you, Yu Yao, are as beautiful as a fairy and as pure as ice and jade. But in my eyes, you're just a shameless slut. Put away your self-righteous face. You're already a whore, and you still want to establish a chastity." A few days before the big wedding, you actually have a tryst with a pretty boy. You still have a face to mock and ridicule me. Facing the girl's murderous gaze, Qin Feng said with a tone of extreme pity and schadenfreude, "But the most pitiful one is our seventh young Master Qin. He hasn't even married yet, and he's already wearing a big green hat." On the side, Qin Shou looked strangely at the unusually happy Qin Feng and whispered in Qin Feng's ear, "Young master, Miss Yu Yao seems to have been your fiancée before she was born. If that's the case, you..." Qin Feng's laughter came to an abrupt end, and his face instantly distorted. Chapter 36. In all fairness, Yu Yao is indeed beautiful. Her tall and graceful figure, her slender and beautiful legs, and especially her seductive eyes and red lips that were hot like flames, all of them emanated an aura of seduction. But looking at this woman, Qin Feng felt uncomfortable, as if he had eaten a dead fly. So, who was the one who was cuckolded? Qin Feng widened his eyes and felt that his head was cuckolded. This feeling made him feel very bad, so with a bang, the talkative dark-faced man was sent flying with a kick. The pink-clothed girl's face was gloomy. Qin Feng's reaction was somewhat beyond her imagination. She had seen Qin Feng before, but every time Qin Feng saw her, he was always a yes man. He didn't even have the courage to raise his head and look at her. He was just a good-for-nothing. At this moment, not only did he dare to speak loudly, but he also dared to speak, ridicule, and insult her. For a moment, she was so angry that her face turned red, and the cold, killing intent in her eyes was faintly discernible. "You're Qin Feng, the good-for-nothing ninth young master of the Qin family." The young man on the side spoke. He had a smile on his face, but his eyes carried a trace of sharpness like a sword. He shouted, "You're a good-for-nothing, but you've got guts. You dare to speak to my Yu heir like this? Who are you? You're just an adulterer, but you're so arrogant." Qin Feng curled his lips and said unhappily. Yu Yao frowned, coldly stared at Qin Feng, and said disdainfully, "Qin Feng, who's the adulterer and who's the slut? I, Yu Yao, have never agreed to the marriage with your Qin family. Don't be so self-righteous. Who do you think you are? You're just a good-for-nothing. How can you be worthy of me? Even if my future husband isn't a peerless genius, he's still a peerless hero who can suppress a region. He's definitely not someone a good-for-nothing like you can match. As for Qin Feng, he's just a genius who thinks he's infallible." The reason why he agreed to Qin Qingshan's marriage proposal was just a temporary measure of the Yu clan. However, after today, the Upper Rivertown Qin clan will no longer exist in this area. Qin Feng will also disappear. Speaking of Qin Feng, the corners of Yu Yao's eyes carried a trace of seriousness, but then she smiled. A pair of beautiful and tender eyes fell on the handsome young man in green. As for him, Yu Yao's disgust for Qin Feng was swept away. Her beautiful eyes rippled with a strange light, and her eyes were as gentle as water. A trace of pride flashed in her eyes as she gracefully lifted her head and spoke. He's Ning Yutong, a genius of Three River Town's Ning clan. His identity is absolutely not something trash like you can compare to. He's a genius, and I'm a waste? Qin Feng pointed at Ning Yutong, who had an indifferent smile on his face, and laughed. Yu Yao's beautiful eyes sparkled, and she said with a trace of pride, "Yes, Yutong is a true genius." He broke through the fifth firmament of the martial path before the age of 15 and condensed the great circulation of internal breath. Even among the top geniuses in the Mountain River City, he could be considered one of the best. Qin Feng from your Qin family is nothing. He hasn't even broken through the third firmament of the martial path at the age of 15. He isn't even worthy to carry Yutong's shoes. As for you, a trace of deep disgust flashed in Yu Yao's eyes, and she smiled gently. The contempt in her eyes was self-evident. Me? Qin Feng blinked his eyes, looked at the arrogant young man in green, and Yu Yao, who had a "I have good taste" expression on her face, and suddenly grinned. "What do you think about me?" Qin Shou ran back and saw the strange smile on Qin Feng's face. He suddenly muttered in his heart. The devil laughed again. This time, something bad was going to happen. Yu Yao sneered and said without any trace of politeness, "You're just mud in the ground, forever stepped on. A waste that eats and waits for death is not worthy of being mentioned in the same breath as Yutong." Yu Yao simply disdained to pay attention to Qin Feng. In her eyes, Ning Yutong's future was destined to be colorful, and he would even come into contact with a level that the Yu family's patriarch had never come into contact with. He was a great figure in the future. What was Qin Feng? He was just a waste. She couldn't be bothered to pay attention to such a person. Yao, don't pay attention to this waste. Since he discovered the relationship between the two of us, he must die today. Ning Yutong's handsome face was covered with a layer of cold, killing intent, and a trace of cruel, killing intent flashed in his eyes. Two figures landed on the left and right sides of the path, blocking Qin Feng and Qin Shou's path. Their eyes were full of ferocious, killing intent, as if they were looking at a dead man. Qin Feng coughed dryly, slightly self-deprecating. He was such a failure as a person to be looked down upon by his fiancée. However, when he saw Yu Yao looking at Ning Yutong with eyes that were as gentle as water from time to time, a trace of coldness suddenly appeared on his face. The smile on his face disappeared, and he raised his head. His gaze was incomparably fierce, like a sharp sword. His voice was cold and indifferent. "Yao, I don't care what kind of thoughts you have, whether it's climbing up the ladder or stepping on the weak, or whether it's for benefits or something like that. Since you are my, Qin Feng's, betrothed wife, you cannot be unfaithful and fickle. I, Qin Feng, can turn my back on you, but you cannot turn your back on me, Qin Feng. Later, I will properly settle this account with you." Yu Yao was shocked. With an incredulous look on her face, Qin Feng pointed the long sword in his hand at Ning Yutong. "As for you, you adulterer, you dared to seduce Yu Yao and even wanted to kill her to silence her. Today you will die. Just by relying on a waste like you." Ning Yutong didn't know whether to laugh or cry. On the side, Yu Yao was laughing even harder. Her snow-white and smooth curves rose and fell rapidly. Just as the two were laughing at each other, Qin Feng moved in an instant. Since comprehending the artistic conception of breeze, Qin Feng had integrated this conception into his body movement and footwork. His speed was unimaginably fast. Like a gust of wind, he appeared in front of Ning Yutong in an instant and punched out. Qin Feng didn't leave any leeway as soon as he made a move. This punch was the result of his lifetime's cultivation, and all his strength was gathered at one point. With a punch, a figure seemed to be wrapped in a storm and thunder. The fierce fist sealed all the space around Ning Yutong's body, leaving him nowhere to hide. Suddenly, the smile on Ning Yutong's face was too late to retract. The huge fist had enlarged infinitely in his eyes, and an aura of death came head-on. In fear, his eyes widened. He suppressed the fear in his heart, waved his hands, and resisted Qin Feng's punch with all his strength. He pushed out his palms. Although it was in a hurry, it was full of hidden strength condensed from his internal breath. His palms pushed out like a thunderbolt. His palms were pushed to the extreme, and there was a faint brilliance. However, he still underestimated Qin Feng's strength. Qin Feng's black tortoise strength could completely shake the ancient Yunling giant tiger. Even the Yunling giant tiger was beaten until its head was full of bumps and it ran all over the mountain. How could a mere pair of palms stop it? Ning Yutong only blocked the fierce fist for a few breaths of time. Then, with a few cracking sounds, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking and shattering, Qin Feng's fist hit Ning Yutong's chest with an irresistible force. With a bang, Ning Yutong's body was thrown up several feet high like a cannonball, and he rolled into the bushes more than 100 feet away. However, his last block dissipated part of the fist force. Qin Feng didn't kill him with one blow, but Qin Feng's last blow on his chest shattered most of his ribs from the outside to the inside. Even if he survived, he could only spend the rest of his life in bed. Shock, sluggishness, and disbelief. Ning Yutong, a genius of the fifth celestial layer of martial arts, couldn't even block a single move from that trash and was seriously injured. Yu Yao's heart was shaking violently. Her face was ashen, and she was on the verge of dementia. Chapter 37. Qin Feng glanced at Ning Yutong, who looked like a dead dog. He smiled calmly and shrugged his shoulders, looking very relaxed. However, what no one saw was that one of his hands was trembling violently behind his back. His hand was extremely sore and numb. Qin Feng had seriously injured Ning Yutong, who was at the fifth heavenly layer of the martial path, with one punch. On the surface, he looked impressive, but secretly, he had to pay a price. The fifth heavenly layer of the martial path was definitely not something that a martial artist who had just entered the fourth heavenly layer of the martial path could easily deal with. This Ning guy should have cultivated a metal attribute cultivation technique. His condensed hidden strength has a natural killing power. Its attack power is extremely strong. It actually broke through my mixed element unity chi and pierced directly into my meridians through my skin, injuring the small meridians in my hand. Qin Feng was surprised as he operated the mixed element unity chi to eliminate the hidden strength in his hand. With a thought, Qin Feng thought to himself, "Fortunately, although my mixed element unity chi doesn't have the various special powers of other attributes, it is all-encompassing and can dissolve all hidden strength. No matter what attribute the hidden strength is, it can be eliminated and devoured by the mixed element unity chi." In just a moment, the numbness in his hand disappeared, and the strange hidden strength that had infiltrated his body had been eliminated. Qin Feng raised his head, and his gaze fell on Yu Yao. Unexpectedly, except for the initial shock, Yu Yao quickly recovered her calm. She was not angry or even sad because Ning Yutong was crippled. She didn't even look at Ning Yutong, who was lying in the distance, as if he was a stranger who had nothing to do with her. She was unusually calm, without a trace of panic. Instead, there was a trace of a superior's examination in her beautiful eyes. She had a faint smile on her face. Her foxy eyes stared at Qin Feng as she spoke with a playful tone. "Qin Feng, I didn't expect you to pretend to be a pig to eat a tiger. Others only think that you are a waste, but they don't know that you are even more powerful than the so-called master of the Qin family. Not only did you deceive Qin Feng, but you also deceived Qin Qingshan. You are the most powerful person in the Qin family." Yu Yao walked elegantly, clapped her hands, and chuckled. "If I'm not wrong, you've already condensed your qi and have the cultivation of the fourth heavenly layer. Killing Ning Yutong, who is at the fifth heavenly layer of the martial Dao, at the fourth heavenly layer, is truly splendid." Qin Feng frowned. There was something wrong with this woman. As if he had nothing to fear, Qin Feng became vigilant. Yu Yao smiled gently, as if she had sensed Qin Feng's surprise. She took light steps forward, and Qin Feng felt a pleasant smell like orchids and musk enter his nose. This was the fragrance of a young girl. Qin Feng glanced at her. The girl was very close to him. Her figure was extremely hot and graceful. Her slender waist seemed to be unable to bear her weight. After getting close to her, Qin Feng realized that the girl was very tall. Standing in front of her, she was not shorter than him. Is she trying to overwhelm me with her aura? Qin Feng raised his eyebrows, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. His footsteps staggered silently, and his figure rushed out like a cheetah. The next moment, he appeared behind Yu Yao, and one of his hands directly grabbed Yu Yao's chest. His 5 fingers were like eagle claws. Once caught, it was very likely that one's stomach would be cut open. Yu Yao smiled faintly. She was like a goddess of the jade pool, a son of God. She was also skillful in the sharp claws. After seducing me, you still want to run away? No way. Qin Feng's eyes flashed a glimmer of light. Yu Yao's body movement was mysterious, but his speed was not slow either. His self-created breeze steps was like a wisp of breeze passing through flowers, following her like a shadow. The two were like an immortal couple, graceful and graceful, but cold and murderous. Almost every inch of their clothes had become a killing weapon. Yu Yao was unexpectedly dangerous. Although she was only at the 4th heavenly layer of the martial path, she was even more difficult to deal with than Ning Yutong. Her body moved like a swallow in the water or a bird flying into the forest. This was an extremely profound body movement technique. Her feathered clothes fluttered, turning into the most terrifying weapon that could easily crush mountain rocks. Yu Yao, you will pay the price today. The more she acted like this, the more Qin Feng wanted to grab hold of her. His eyes shone with a bright light, and at this moment, Yu Yao's slender hand moved with lightning speed, aiming for Qin Feng's face. Her 5 slender fingers were as white as orchids, and her fingertips were tinged with a faint golden glow. Qin Feng's eyes flashed, and he even saw a snow-white lotus arm from Yu Yao's wide sleeves. His figure slipped, and like a loach, he turned over and avoided this attack. Chi-Chi, her fingertips brushed past, and Qin Feng's shoulder was half a step slower. An incomparably sharp force swept past his shoulder, and Qin Feng felt an incomparably sharp force sweep past his skin. Qin Feng's face changed. His figure swayed, and with a clear wind step, he appeared several feet away like a phantom. He coldly glanced at his shoulder. It was badly mutilated, and the pain was unbearable. But fortunately, it was only a layer of skin that was broken, and his muscles and bones were not injured. "Young master," Qin Shou exclaimed and was about to approach, but he was stopped by Qin Feng's hand. "No wonder you were so confident. Seeing your adulterer killed, you still dared to take the initiative to provoke me. So you actually have the power to crush gold." Qin Feng's eyes were solemn, and he raised his head in surprise. "You actually know about the power to crush gold?" Yu Yao's red lips slightly parted, and her foxy eyes were filled with surprise. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a trace of a cold smile as he said, "Gold crush, dawn, glorious sun, jade crystal, rosy cloud, collapsing snow, and primal chaos. These are the 7 most mysterious inner breaths. Although they're not the strongest, they're the most mysterious. The power to crush gold is said to be the most difficult to deal with. Once hit by the power to crush gold, it is extremely difficult to get rid of. The power to crush gold will scatter into the body like stars, destroying the meridians. The strangest thing is that the power to crush gold is usually extremely painful. This is because the power to crush gold will tear apart their internal organs bit by bit, hollowing out their internal organs. According to rumor, the energy of gold shatter is a mutation of the metal element, and it's impossible to cultivate without luck. When he spoke up to hear, Qin Feng couldn't help but sigh, and he couldn't help but exclaim with admiration towards Qinxi's luck. To be able to cultivate the power to crush gold, this was definitely a 1 in a million chance. If there was a difference in the quality of inner breaths, then the power to crush gold was definitely one of the best. It was extremely pure, and there were almost no impurities. Moreover, its aggressive attack was extremely powerful. "Qin Feng, I have to look at you with new eyes. I didn't expect you to know so much about the power to crush gold. Yu Yao raised her head, and a strange look flashed across her beautiful eyes. Obviously, she didn't expect Qin Feng to know so much about her power to crush gold. She combed the hair on her forehead, and a faint smile flashed across her beautiful eyes. Qin Feng, you could be considered as an outstanding talent of your generation. You can hide so deeply under the eyes of that old fox Qin Shan. Your tenacity, perseverance, and shrewdness are not comparable to that so-called leader of resurgence, Qin Feng. Unfortunately, you shouldn't have hurt Ning Yutong. Although I don't like this arrogant guy, he is after all related to the plan of the Ning and Yu families, so you must pay with your life for him. Yu Yao said regretfully, "It's your fortune and misfortune to have encountered this lady's gold-shattering power." But then her tone changed, and a faint arrogance appeared in her eyes as she said, "However, it's also your honor to die under my power. After all, not everyone is qualified to die under my power." But the next moment, her expression changed slightly, and then a sneer appeared on her face. A slender, jade-like hand flew across the air and blasted behind her. She waved her hand, and there was a faint golden light on her 5 fingers. The friction with the air made a tearing sound. The power to crush gold. In the direction of her palm, a figure suddenly appeared and punched fiercely. The fist and palm collided, and there was a bang. A violent and chaotic force burst out. Unexpectedly, Yu Yao's figure flew out like a cannonball. She felt a severe numbing pain in her shoulder, as if her arm was broken. Yu Yao raised her head in disbelief, and a pair of beautiful eyes stared at Qin Feng, who appeared in the same place. Her originally confident face was full of disbelief. She was tongue-tied. Qin Feng clearly met her attack head-on and was hit by her power to crush gold. How could it be that her arm was broken, and Qin Feng was completely fine? Seeing Yu Yao's ashen and gloomy face, Qin Feng's mouth curved into a mocking sneer. "Yu Yao, I'm afraid today is not Qin Feng's misfortune, but your misfortune. Not only will your adulterer die here, but your end won't be any better." Qin Feng's gloomy and evil eyes fell on Yu Yao. Yu Yao felt naked in front of Qin Feng, and she couldn't help but have small bumps on her skin. For a moment, her beautiful eyes couldn't help but reveal a trace of panic, shame, and anger. She felt like she was being stared at by a wolf. She had an extremely bad feeling about this. Chapter 38. Fortunately, I have cultivated the mixed element unity chi. Although my mixed element unity chi doesn't have the various special powers of other attributes, it is all-encompassing and can melt all kinds of dark force. No matter what attribute the dark force is, it can be eliminated and devoured by the mixed element unity chi. If I had cultivated other attributes, it would be really difficult to deal with this terrifying metal fragment force. Qin Feng thought in his heart as he felt the tearing pain from his hand after injuring Yu Yao with a punch. "Qin Feng, you hit so deeply." Staring at Qin Feng, Yu Yao's face was gloomy. Her situation could be said to be extremely bad. Never in her wildest dreams did she expect that the power of the gold fragment would be ineffective against Qin Feng. Yu Yao was ready to escape, but Qin Feng seemed to be prepared. Qin Shou also stood up, and the two of them cooperated with each other and locked her in place. Yu Yao secretly regretted and thought in her heart, "If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have stopped this fiend. I originally wanted to kill him, but I didn't expect him to be so terrifying." First, he severely injured Ning Yutong with a single punch. Now, even my gold fragment power can't do anything. Also, that Ning Yutong is simply a waste. In fact, Yu Yao shouldn't blame Ning Yutong. Ning Yutong was careless and underestimated the enemy, which was why he was seriously injured by Qin Feng's punch. A trace of embarrassment flashed across Yu Yao's beautiful face. She never dreamed that such a day would come. She always thought that she and Qin Feng were people from 2 different worlds, and it was impossible for them to communicate. Qin Feng was simply a waste in her heart, and he didn't even have the qualifications to be compared with her. The arranged marriage was just a joke. From the bottom of her heart, she rejected and hated this so-called fiancé. Therefore, when the head of the Yu family and her father denied the engagement and asked her to marry Qin Feng, she agreed without any hesitation. But now, facing the aggressive Qin Feng, Yu Yao could only reluctantly squeeze out a smile and said softly, "Qin Feng, there's actually a misunderstanding between us. The one who broke the engagement wasn't our Yu clan, but your Qin clan's patriarch, Qin Qingshan. He took the initiative to ask us to change the engagement and marry Qin Feng. Our marriage was decided by the previous generation. Qin Qingshan has no right to interfere. You are my fiancé," Yu Yao said pitifully. "However, he is still the patriarch of the Qin clan. Since he is forcing me, I have no right to choose." It had to be said that Yu Yao was indeed a shrewd woman. With just a few words, she was able to remove all responsibility from her body. Coupled with the beauty's tears and pitiful appearance, it was even more convincing. Her appearance was shockingly beautiful. If it was another person, their heart might have softened. Qin Feng raised his head, his dark eyes carrying a hint of mockery. "Yu Yao, what's the point of saying all this now? No matter what, I won't let you off today." Yu Yao's face turned cold. She changed her tearful and pitiful appearance. She clenched her teeth and pursed her red lips. "Qin Feng, you really want to kill me?" Yu Yao's heart was filled with resentment. She had already lowered her voice. What else did this Qin Feng want? She was the young miss of the Yu clan. When had she ever lowered her head to others? Qin Feng sneered. This woman's eyes were filled with arrogance from the beginning. Even though she was forced to a dead end, she still had a high and mighty appearance. It was as if lowering her head was already the biggest concession to Qin Feng. It was as if the fact that he wanted to silence Qin Feng was a gift to him. Qin Feng's dark eyes flashed with a trace of cold light. He sneered and said, "Yu Yao, it's not me who wants to kill you. It's you who wants to kill me. Now it's your retribution. I said that I would strip you of all your pride and trample you, the so-called high and mighty young miss, under my feet." After saying that, under Yu Yao's panic gaze, Qin Feng rushed forward like an arrow leaving the bow. A figure leaped down and grabbed at Yu Yao like an iron claw. Caught off guard and unable to dodge, Yu Yao could only clench her teeth and raise her other arm to block in front of her. At the same time, she turned around and tried her best to retreat. She wanted to increase the distance between them and find a chance to escape. Want to run? No way. Qin Feng saw through Yu Yao's thoughts at a glance. He threw out a punch, using the black tortoise's yin-yang dao. His fist was like a long snake. It coiled around Yu Yao, who was trying to increase the distance between them. Under Yu Yao's furious gaze, a hand like an iron claw grabbed Yu Yao's slender hand. "Gotcha!" With a slight force, Qin Feng easily dislocated Yu Yao's remaining arm. "Puchi!" A trace of unwillingness and humiliation flashed across Yu Yao's face. A slender and flexible leg broke through the air, aiming for Qin Feng's face. Qin Feng frowned. His other arm, like an iron wrist, easily clamped Yu Yao's slender and flexible, beautiful leg. Immediately, Yu Yao's leg was raised high, and she was put in a very humiliating position. Seeing this scene from the side, the dark-faced man Qin Shou consciously turned around and came to the side of Ning Yutong, who was lying on the ground and staring at this scene. He blocked Ning Yutong's view and stared at him coldly. Yu Yao looked aghast. Her beautiful face was filled with shame and anger as she struggled with all her strength. "Qin Feng, what are you doing? You bastard, let go of me, I'm going to kill you." "Let go of you? In your dreams." Qin Feng sneered. He used his strength to suppress Yu Yao's leg that she wanted to pull back. He stared at the girl in front of him with a smile. It had to be said that Yu Yao was indeed a very rare beauty. Her skin was fair, her face was delicate, and her eyebrows were like willow leaves that could speak. Especially those beautiful and bewitching big eyes. Even if they were angry, they were still very seductive. Yu Yao's figure leaned towards the tall side, especially her legs, which were long and smooth. Fighting at close range, Qin Feng only felt the blood in his body boiling. Yu Yao's body stiffened, and then her eyes widened. Qin Feng, you dare. Qin Feng raised his eyebrows and sneered. Why wouldn't I dare? Qin Feng simply raised a hand. Yu Yao screamed, and with a hiss, her feet flew all over the sky. Qin Feng's eyes were slightly startled, and for a moment, his nose was a little moist. Yu Yao covered her exposed body and stared coldly at the aggressive young man. After a while, Yu Yao suddenly let go of her hand, closed her eyes, and said with a sneer, Qin Feng, you do it. Yu Yao will just treat it as being bitten by a dog. Seeing this, Qin Feng was amused. His eyes flashed with a trace of a sneer as he said casually, Okay. He grabbed Yu Yao with one hand, and under the shocked and humiliated gaze of Qin Shou and Ning Yutong, he dragged Yu Yao into a hidden bush. Soon, Yu Yao's exclamations, angry curses, and painful cries came from the bush. Ning Yutong lay on the ground with hatred. Humiliation, anger, and sorrow flashed in his eyes. After a while, his eyes suddenly widened, and he vomited a mouthful of black blood. He was actually angered to death. Chapter 39. Qin Shou looked at the angered Ning Yutong in surprise. Then, he rubbed his palms together and casually stripped the dead Ning Yutong naked. After following Qin Feng for so long, Qin Shou didn't learn anything else except for Qin Feng's ability to plunder. An hour later, Qin Feng walked out of the bushes with a satisfied face. His face was rosy, and he looked like he was in the spring breeze. Yu Yao limped out while covering her back. No one knew what she was thinking about on her beautiful face. Her face was angry, gloomy, and cold, revealing a murderous intent. After a while, she raised her head and stared at Qin Feng, angrily saying, Qin Feng, if you don't kill me today, Yu Yao, swear that I will make you pay the price in the future. Qin Feng stopped and turned around to stare at the beautiful girl with a frosty face and murderous eyes, coldly threatening her. Yu Yao, if you want to kill me, you'd better think about the secret on your butt. Hearing this, Yu Yao's beautiful face was so gloomy that it dripped water. Her pink lips pursed, and her foxy big eyes were filled with humiliation and anger. Yu Yao couldn't say anything. In the distance, Qin Shou heard the conversation between the two and looked at the limping Yu Yao in surprise. It had only been an hour since the two of them went in, so why was there such a large pool of blood behind each other when they came out? Qin Shou was in a daze, but with his eyesight, he could still see that Yu Yao was still a virgin and hadn't lost her virginity. But since she hadn't lost her virginity, why was there blood behind her? He stared hard at Yu Yao's back with a strange expression, causing Yu Yao's face to turn red. The veins on her hand that was holding the hilt of her sword bulged, as if she wanted to draw her sword and kill someone. In fact, Qin Feng didn't do anything to Yu Yao. He only did something to the latter's private parts. This was also what made Yu Yao the most angry and ashamed. Yu Yao, after all, you're my Qin Feng's fiancé. Although I, Qin Feng, don't like you, I can't let you hook up with other men outside. These were Qin Feng's original words. Qin Feng knew that Yu Yao was an absolute egoist, and she was extremely good at using him to her advantage. She was unscrupulous. This kind of person was very capable and usually climbed very fast. If she was given a chance, she could easily succeed. Therefore, when it came to Yu Yao, he had to either eliminate her completely or ruthlessly control her. Qin Feng chose the latter. Although Yu Yao was inexperienced and her methods were immature, if she was properly trained, there was still a lot of room for her to grow. If he could truly subdue this woman, she could become his right-hand man in the future. Qin Feng glanced indifferently at Ning Yutong, who was stripped until only his underwear was left, and glanced at the things in Qin Shou's hands. At this time, Yu Yao also saw Ning Yutong's naked appearance, and her face turned a little green. She bit her lips so hard that blood dripped out. After all, they were still a couple an hour ago. Yu Yao, speak. Just now, you said that the Qin family is going to be destroyed. What's going on? Yu Yao coldly glanced at Qin Feng with a gloomy face. If she didn't know that she couldn't beat the latter, she would probably rush up and kill him to silence him. Qin Feng ignored Yu Yao's gaze that was filled with killing intent as he lightly smiled. Speak. What happened to the Qin family that they don't even care about chasing me? The Qin family is chasing you? Yu Yao's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise, and a strange light flashed in her eyes. She asked tentatively, "Why would the Qin family want to kill you? Could it be that after they found out that you hid your cultivation, they're afraid of you and want to get rid of you? You don't need to probe. You will find out about these things in the future." Qin Feng's eyes turned cold. In the future, don't ask questions that you shouldn't ask. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. Being stared at by Qin Feng's cold eyes, Yu Yao's hair stood on end. It was as if she was being stared at by a ferocious beast. What followed was anger and annoyance. When had Miss Yu Yao ever suffered such grievances? With her appearance and talent, when had she ever been treated coldly? The young talents around her were endless, trying to curry favor with her in every possible way. Even if it was a martial arts powerhouse of the older generation, as long as she showed a little bit of her talent, it would be a gentle breeze and drizzle. Now, she had fallen into the hands of this trash Qin Feng. He had threatened her, berated her, and even cursed her. Yu Yao was so angry that tears welled up in her beautiful eyes. However, Qin Feng was like a block of ice. He ignored her and continued to stare at her. Yu Yao was discouraged. For the first time, she doubted her own appearance. She bit her red lips and turned around. After a long time, she spoke with a cold expression. The Qin family has become the target of public criticism in this area. Not only the Ning family, but also the Yu family and Song family. Even the horse bandits in the Iron Ridge Mountain Range have set their sights on the Qin family's upper river town. Oh, no wonder. Qin Feng suddenly understood. No wonder the Qin family's elites had retreated in a hurry. It turned out that their headquarters was under threat. How could these forces set their sights on the Qin family? Don't they care about the revenge of the Qin family's main bloodline? On the side, Qin Shou questioned with an ashen face. There was a trace of anxiety on his face. His wife and children were all in Upper River Town. If the bandits broke into Upper River Town, he didn't dare to imagine the consequences. Yu Yao sneered. A cold light flashed in her eyes as she mocked. The Mountain River City's Qin family is powerful, but compared to a crystal jade mine, what is it? After speaking, Yu Yao said word by word. A few days ago, a servant of the Qin family was digging a well. By chance, he dug up a strange crystal stone. It was confirmed that it was a piece of primeval crystal jade. There is a primeval crystal jade mine under Upper River Town. Crystal jade mine? Is it that a spirit, or that is even rarer than gold? Why would it appear under Upper River Town? Qin Shou's eyes widened as if he was struck by lightning. A crystal jade mine was an exceptionally precious treasure. The crystal jade mine was rich in precious crystal jades. The price of crystal jades was extremely high in the market. A piece of crystal jade of the lowest quality was worth more than 100 taels of gold. The crystal jade contained a gentle spirit energy that could gather heaven and earth origin energy and transform it into spirit energy. If a martial artist could sit in a cultivation room made of crystal jade while cultivating, they could achieve twice the results with half the effort. Yu Yao also knew that if a Xian master were to set up a Xian gathering spirit array, the effects would be even more incredible. The benefits of this kind of thing were too great. A primeval crystal jade mine was enough to make people go crazy. The Qin family was sitting on a volcano right now. Seeing that Qin Feng was still indifferent, Yu Yao couldn't help but ask Qin Feng, "Aren't you surprised at all?" Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded his head. "I'm surprised, very surprised." Yu Yao coldly snorted, thinking that Qin Feng was patronizing her. She immediately shut her mouth and kept a straight face. She didn't know that Qin Feng was indeed very surprised. However, the reason wasn't what Yu Yao imagined. A place like Upper River Town had a crystal jade mine because he was certain that there wasn't a complete crystal jade mine under Upper River Town. A crystal jade mine was a natural treasure that was born from heaven and earth. It was difficult for it to appear unless it was in a spirit mountain-blessed land. A crystal jade mine often meant the appearance of a spirit mountain-blessed land. Although Upper Rivertown was known for its fertile land and beautiful scenery, it had nothing to do with a spirit mountain-blessed land. A spirit mountain-blessed land's spirit energy gathered, and its spirit veins were hidden. If one cultivated there, their cultivation speed would be several times faster than other places. Most of these places were gathered by powerful sects or ancient families. Therefore, Qin Feng could determine that Upper Rivertown didn't have a crystal jade mine. However, since these families said that there was a primeval crystal jade mine under Upper Rivertown, there was only one possibility. The crystal jade mine in Upper Rivertown had already been abandoned. A complete primeval crystal jade mine was enough to make any force go crazy. However, if this crystal jade mine was abandoned, then its value was worth considering. The reason why crystal jade mines were abandoned was because of excessive mining. Naturally, large forces wouldn't be interested in such an abandoned crystal jade mine. However, for small families like the Qin family and the Yu family, such an abandoned crystal jade mine was a piece of fat meat. Qin Feng was also interested in this crystal jade mine. However, his goal wasn't the remaining crystal jade in this abandoned crystal jade mine. Instead, it was a natural treasure that was often born in crystal jade mines. Such a natural treasure had an extremely strong auxiliary effect for cultivation. If he could obtain it, he might be able to enter the 7th heavenly layer in a very short time. Chapter 40. According to Qin Feng's understanding of crystal jade mines, the core of most crystal jade mines had a chance of producing 1 or 2 treasures. These treasures were called spirit treasures and were extremely precious. Qin Feng didn't have high expectations for this abandoned crystal jade mine. He didn't expect to find any innate spirit treasures. He only wanted the most common crystal diamond. The crystal diamond was one of the lowest level spirit treasures produced by the crystal jade mine, but one should never underestimate it. The crystal diamond was full of spirit energy, and it was a spirit item that had a very strong auxiliary effect for cultivation, especially for martial artists in the 9th heavenly layer. It could also amplify and purify one's inner breath. The wisp of extremely pure, innate spiritual qi it contained was no less effective than remolding a warrior's body. This was the most precious point. A crystal diamond was priceless. If Qin Feng had a crystal diamond now, he was confident that he could break through to the 7th heavenly layer in a very short time. Of course, it was also possible that the core spirit treasure that had a chance of being produced in this abandoned crystal jade mine had been taken away by someone with foresight. Qin Feng's eyes flickered. He made up his mind. No matter what, he had to find a way to enter the jade mine and try his luck. However, there are many people watching the crystal jade mine. It won't be easy to sneak in and find the crystal diamond, especially the people of the Qin clan. At that time, I'm afraid I'll meet the experts of the Qin clan. With my current cultivation, I'm afraid I won't be able to catch them. This time, I really have to snatch food from the tiger's mouth. Qin Feng's eyes flickered as he thought to himself, "What are you thinking about?" Suddenly, a voice rang out in his ears. Qin Feng raised his head and discovered that Yu Yao had unknowingly appeared in front of him. Her pair of beautiful big eyes were looking at him suspiciously. There was a trace of suspicion in her beautiful eyes. "Nothing," Qin Feng asked casually. "Then what is the Qin clan doing now?" "Defending Upper Rivertown and waiting for reinforcements from the Qin clan of Mountain River City?" Yu Yao looked at Qin Feng in amazement, nodded her head, and exclaimed in admiration, "Qin Feng, I've really underestimated you in the past. You're really able to predict things like a god. Now, the Qin clan's people are guarding Upper Rivertown and are not leaving, waiting for reinforcements. As for the Ning family, Song family, and our Yu family, as well as the experts from the Iron Ridge Mountain Range, they were all blocked outside the city." After saying that, Yu Yao coldly smiled. She stared at Qin Feng with a complacent smile. "But tonight, the city will be destroyed, and the Qin clan will be defeated. Qin Feng raised his eyebrows. The other party's confident tone made him happy. I don't think so. Perhaps your preparations are indeed sufficient. The city will definitely fall, but the Qin family will definitely not perish. Yu Yao's face was filled with disbelief. She laughed disdainfully. Stubborn duck. You probably don't know how many experts have gathered outside Upper Rivertown this time. There are no less than 5 experts at the 7th firmament of the Martial Path, and there are even more experts at the 6th firmament of the Martial Path. According to what I know, only the Patriarch of your Qin clan, Qin Qingshan, is at the 7th firmament of the Martial Path. Fighting 1 against 5, he will definitely die. As for the reinforcements from the Qin clan in Mountain River City, they will need at least 2 days to arrive. By the time they arrive, it will be too late. Qin Feng had no intention of arguing with Yu Yao. Besides, the life and death of the Qin clan had nothing to do with him. He brought the 2 of them to the top of the Qiang mountain range. At this time, the manors of the Qin clan in the Qiang mountain range were completely empty. The Qin clan had all returned to their headquarters in Upper Rivertown. Night fell. Looking down from the top of the mountain, one could see the panoramic view of Upper Rivertown. In the past, Upper Rivertown would be bustling with traffic and lights. There would be an endless stream of street vendors buying supper. But now, the entire Upper Rivertown was silent. In the entire town, there were only a few gloomy wind lanterns emitting a green light near the Qin clan's mansion. The atmosphere was austere, as if they were facing a great enemy. In the dark night, there was a hidden killing intent. Outside the city, there was a stretch of tents that stretched for half a mile. There was a raging fire, and there was a boiling cauldron of voices. Even from the top of the mountain, one could hear the shouting and cursing at the bottom of the mountain. 9th young master, what should we do? Qin Shou's face was filled with anxiety. His wife and children were all in Upper Rivertown, and he was very worried. Wait for the right time and sneak in. First, find out the location of the crystal jade mine, and then go in to fish for benefits. Qin Feng replied casually. Seeing Qin Shou's worried expression, he couldn't help but say, You don't have to worry too much. Once we return to the city, I will find a chance to save your family. Also, the Qin clan's people aren't easy to deal with. Upper Rivertown is built next to a river, and the Qin clan has been painstakingly managing it for generations. There are traps everywhere, so it won't be that easy to break through. At the side, Yu Yao smiled coldly. The mountain breeze blew her hair, and her jet-black hair danced in the wind. Her beautiful face lit up for a moment, and even Qin Shou, who had an anxious expression, couldn't help but be stunned. Yu Yao glanced at Qin Feng's expression, and a trace of arrogance appeared in her eyes. But when her gaze swept over Qin Feng, she found that his expression was indifferent, and he didn't seem to care about her in the slightest. For a moment, she couldn't help but feel a bit angry. She coldly harumphed and said mockingly, Qin Feng, your horizons are still limited. Let me tell you, if this was in the past, the Qin clan might have been able to hold on for a bit. But based on what I've found out, the Qin clan has lost many of their elites over the past few days for some reason. Right now, their combat strength is less than half of what it was at its peak. Do you think they can still hold on against the Zhu clan's army, which is like a pack of wolves and tigers? After she finished speaking, a trace of surprise flashed through her eyes. I wonder what kind of martial arts expert was able to cause such great losses to the Qin clan in just a few days. This kind of person is really admirable. After she finished speaking, her foxy eyes glanced at Qin Feng and said mockingly, This kind of person is a true expert, unlike some people who are full of schemes and evil tricks. They only know how to bully little girls like us. Weren't those people eliminated by young Master Qin Feng? Qin Shou was startled, and a cold smile flashed across his dark face. He opened his mouth and was about to tell the truth when Qin Feng raised his head and stopped him. A cold light flashed through his deep eyes as he sneered. Are you also a little girl? I've never heard of a little girl like you. You let your lover die naked in the ravine, and you're not even willing to collect his corpse. Qin Feng was talking about Ning Yutong. Ning Yutong was angered to death, and then his corpse was stripped by Qin Shou. When they left, he was still lying naked on the ground without collecting his corpse. Yu Yao, this woman, was still affectionate with Ning Yutong before, but when Ning Yutong died, she didn't shed a single tear, not even a sad look, leaving Ning Yutong's corpse exposed in the wilderness. It was really rare for a woman to be so heartless. Hearing this, Yu Yao's face darkened, and she didn't speak anymore. It said that actors are heartless and unintentional. Yu Yao is really one of the best. Qin Feng secretly thought in his heart. He made up his mind that he must be careful of Yu Yao in the future. Such a ruthless, selfish, and cold egoist was a sharp knife, if used well. But if used poorly, he was afraid that he would hurt others and himself. Just as Qin Feng's eyes were fixed on the crystal and jade mine, at nightfall, several fast horses were galloping towards Shanhe Town from the gate of Shanhe Town. Immediately, a young man's cold and gloomy voice urged, "Ning clan, Yu clan's genius Ning Wuk has already made his move in Yuqing, so we must hurry to Shanhe Town." Although the crystal jade mine, discovered by Qin clan in Shanhe Town, was abandoned, there are other secrets inside. We must not let it fall into the hands of others. Anyone who dares to obstruct us, kill without mercy. Yes, young master. On the few fast horses, a few men in green robes with vigorous auras responded loudly. Their murderous auras were like sharp arrows piercing through the night. They were the disciples of Shanhe City's Qin clan, and each of them was in the 6th heavenly layer of the martial path. They were elites that were picked out of 100. The leader, a young man in black robes who was in his 20s, emitted a majestic aura that was even more terrifying than the Qin clan's patriarch, Qin Qingshan. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.